Brian?
Here.
Joanne? Grant.
Okay, we'll do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Approve the agenda. Everybody got a chance to review the agenda? I sure did. I did too. Do I have a motion to approve? A motion to approve the agenda? I second that. Thank you, Susan. I'm gonna, okay, thank you. Garden board clerk. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Public comments? The board cannot take action on comments regarding non-agenda items. We do, however, value public input and consider comments for future action. The chairperson or presiding officer shall have the exclusive authority to recognize speakers from the public during the point of discussion and before including each agenda item within the agenda. Although there's no time limit, comments are respectfully requested to be 3 minutes to speaker. We're not putting any time clock on. So, are there any public comments? Dan?
I'd like to just invite everybody to join me in a moment of prayer, if you choose, to the Creator of all that is, whatever name we choose to use. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity of life. Thank you for this beautiful place that we live in. And thank you for our wonderful friends and neighbors that we share this place with. Please give us the courage to ask the difficult questions, speak the difficult truths, and bless all those who work and volunteer in this office for this organization, and help our decisions and the actions that take place here today be in alignment with the highest and greatest good of all those that this organization serves. Thank you. Amen.
Anyone else?
I just had Josh Huddleston from the Almoner Foundation and the Plumas Housing Council. I just wanted to say to the CSD board and to Adam Cox, thank you for entertaining the idea of housing. Housing is a major issue, not only for Indian Valley, Plumas County, but for the nation. We struggle to have workforce housing no matter where you go. And it's something that we all need to look at and try and come together and figure out. So thank you for spending any energy. Much appreciated.
Questions? All the public comment now, or do we comment at all during the topic when it comes up?
It will come up again for each topic.
Public comment will be there too.
Right, we will ask for public comment for each topic. Anybody else?
Yeah, I want to do more public comment if possible in my agenda item number 6 at D&E specifically. But first, I'd like to public comment to say thank you to the board for continued leadership of an organization through very challenging times. And I would say this to all organizations and all leadership at this point, because coming not just out of the wildfire and the impacts of it, even before there, we had significant challenges within organizations and leadership. And so I want to recognize the board and everyone that has stepped into leadership and show and express deep gratitude for those that continually show up either in volunteer roles, advocate roles, or even directory leadership roles. So first want to say thank you to that. I'll come back to future items.
Awesome, thank you. I would like to add a little bit to that, just since we have so many of the community here, and I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you for being here. I mean, it's awesome. Our board is an amazing board, and it has been since I've been on the board. I'm Chrissy Corbett. I have 30 plus years in utility experience working in gas, electric, and water and sewer is not that much different. You know, we still have billing. Susan is a civil engineer out of Washington and Alaska. So she's our resident expert on the details. Mary is a retired attorney, so we have legal advice, you know, as a board member. Wanda worked for the schools in HR, so we have human resource expertise, and Andy's our building, you know, advice and expert. So the board, as long as I've been on it, has had incredibly talented and congenial members, and that's since the fire. I've joined the CSD board after the fire, and so it's just a really great bunch of people. I just wanted to add that to your comment. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move into the agenda. ABC Workforce Sales Agreement.
This was on your last agenda, you'll recall. We accidentally did not list it as an action item, so we need to take this opportunity to get your approval of this. We're hoping to switch over on April 1st, which is the beginning of a new quarter, makes things easier. As I shared at the last meeting, this service is approximately the same as what we're paying now, maybe even a little bit less, but with far greater support and features, including timekeeping, which is not something that our current system does.
You guys all remember this? Yeah. So we did not have it listed as an item on the agenda. You want to just move on it, or you want to discuss?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Motion's been made by Andy, seconded by, we'll go with Wanda first. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Move number 5 is the resolution, 2025-001. It's a resolution for conflict of interest ordinance approval.
So this is what I would call a housekeeping item. This is something that all special districts need to give to the county that they're located in every 2 years, I believe it is, every other year. And so it is that time, and we just need the board to approve. We did not make any changes. This is our existing conflict of interest code. And basically the purpose of the conflict of interest code is to identify which positions, and you'll see it in the appendix, part 1, identify which positions are required to fill out a Form 700, which is a financial conflict of interest form that's due each year. So this is just reaffirming to the county that we do indeed have a conflict of interest code adopted.
And these are being audited as we speak. I know I'm filling out mine. So
Yeah, so the Form 700s are due April 1st
got it.
for the prior calendar year.
Okay.
So we needed an
We
action.
need a motion to approve this resolution.
I made a motion that we approve this resolution as presented.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Mary. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to district project updates and discussion. So, do you want to start this, or you want me to?
Why don't you go ahead and start? So I mean, just for the benefit of the public, so at our last meeting, we had this same agenda item on. I walked the board through the status of a number of our projects, some of which are still in the early stages of formation. But just wanted to keep you up to date with what would be coming down the pike. There was a request after that meeting for the board to have more discussion on the projects, so that's what the purpose of today's meeting was for.
That's right. Yeah, so, I would like to just kind of kickstart this a little bit. The strategic plan to the organization has listed priorities and tried to list them in priority 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The board has changed numbers a couple times, and funding for certain things has changed, primarily with the federal government, so strategic planning is something that's an ongoing effort. I would like to say to the board kind of how I look at this, and unless somebody wants to take over the chairmanship. I'm kind of
No.
stuck. I have no problem doing it, but kind of the way I look at this discussion is that we go around and each board member who talks about each one of these items and what their number 1 priority, 2 priority, 3 priority, 4 priority is, and kind of what our vision and values are for the district. We've got some training coming up for the board members on establishing vision values for the district, like what do we really stand for, and that's in April, right?
Yeah, there's 2 dates for you to choose from.
Right, but that doesn't mean that we can't say what our vision and values are. It's our town that burned down, right? I mean, for the last 2 years that I've been on the board, I've been saying that our mission is building community confidence, and everybody that I've talked to, Bob's heard me say that about 200 times. I'm hoping that the employees at CSD have heard me say that a bunch, and my friends and neighbors, that's what I've said, is that I think that what CSD needs to do is build community confidence since the town burned down. So with that said, I think for us board members, I'd like to,
So sorry.
right there, I'd like to go around and just talk about the project. And I can start, or I can name or whatever, whoever, if somebody else wants to start, we can do that. But, I think if each one of us it gives a chance to communicate how we feel about each one of the, projects and what we think, will that work?
Yeah, and I'm wondering if maybe I should give just a very brief overview, so
Yeah,
for the benefit, okay.
Okay, and before you do, I would like to say that, I'd like to caution the board that, we hired Adam to go after money. That's when we hired Adam, that's what we asked him to do, was to go after funding to help the community services district. That's what he's done. He's provided, grants and monies to come in that have really kind of helped us survive and remain independent as a CSD. But I think that one of the things that happens is that there's an opportunity to just be patient with what he does, because what Adam does is he goes to conferences, he goes to meetings, he goes to look for government funding. That's what we hired him to do, and that's what he does. So when he comes back with ideas or suggestions, or saying, hey, you know what, this is what I might be going after, I would like to make sure that we're not shooting that down before we even see a proposal. So, for example, the city center, we talked about that a while back. And what he was going after was a $20 million grant that could potentially provide a center. That grant now is no longer questionable, right? So it's not even on the table.
At best.
Doge will probably get its hands on it, yes.
Yeah.
But the point is that
Done.
if he's going after a grant, then let's let him do his work. Let's let him come up with the proposals before we shoot him down. And that's the only thing that I'm asking the board to do, is consider things that we ask our very talented manager to go after. I know at the last meeting, one of the things that was statements like, hey, I thought we were just a water sewer district. We have vanilla water sewer district. If that's the case, we should get rid of Adam. And that's the case.
Or fire too. Water, sewer, fire.
And fire, yeah. So, I kind of heard that at the last meeting, and but what we did was we hired an extremely talented manager to go out, to think outside the box, and come up with some creative solutions that might benefit the town. We either let him or we don't. So, I just want everybody to just consider that with, how we're moving forward.
Question or statement or whatever, I'd like, if Adam would give a rundown on our assets and liabilities and discounts, if that's going to be directly related to any of these items.
It's not on the agenda, no, we can't do it. No, there's gonna be a finance meeting, I believe Tuesday.
Yeah.
And, at our next board meeting, we can run through where we are financially, but it is not agendized.
All right, so, thank you, I appreciate the comments. Just broad overview, we've been pretty successful in bringing funding into the community. In the last 3 years, we've secured about $12 million. So it's pretty, pretty substantial amount. And most of that so far has gone into, or a lot of it has gone into improving the infrastructure, and a significant chunk is being used to stabilize the district in light of the loss of customers and revenue. And so that's going to be a long-term stabilization fund.
Can I add to that for the good of the group here? That means that about 3 million or so went into the underground water pipes. Digit Construction just completed, that was a grant. We got a state grant that we're using interest off of to support the operating costs for the district.
All right, so the board did have a strategic planning session last year, and that is what I've been using to prioritize the ideas that are being developed. The top two in order, most important projects for the board were the fire station and improvements to the Greenville Park. So very quickly, fire stations, public safety center, whatever the final name is going to be, we are pretty much done with design. We are in the final stages of getting approval from Plymouth County for a zoning adjustment that will then allow them to start reviewing the plans in order to issue a building permit. We are going to, in order to kind of get construction jump started, we have a meeting tomorrow with our engineer here, and we are going to basically do it in a two-phase kind of step. So while the county is reviewing all of the building plans, one of the things that we can do is ask them for a grading permit so that we can start all of the earthwork, we can start working on the foundation, and we can get that under contract ASAP. As that work is being done and the county finishes up the building, the plan check review, then we'll put another bid package out for the actual construction of the building for that. We are hopeful that the project can be completed this calendar year, and that we can begin operating out of it this calendar year. It's a lofty goal, but certainly we will have something close to substantial completion this year if we can get under contract with a contractor in the next month or so, 6 weeks perhaps, and that is our goal, to get something awarded for the grading and foundation. Yeah. We were successful in forming a partnership with Plymouth County. We now have a fully executed memorandum with them to fund $1.5 million of the construction cost. Also, I had a little apprehension on what the ultimate budget for the project was going to be. Good news, we did get final engineers' estimates last week, I think it was, might have been 2 weeks ago, but it is looking like, in the engineer's opinion, its construction is roughly $5 million. And then we're looking at probably another few $100,000 for furniture, equipment, everything to outfit the actual building.
5.5 million.
Somewhere in there. So the next step will be, for me, probably, I'm not sure, I doubt it'll happen next week at your next regular board meeting. We might need a special meeting in April before your April board meeting. But the next step will be, I will bring a total project budget to you for approval, along with the funding sources. And then we'll also ask for your approval to adopt the plans and specs, which is a requirement of the Public Contract Code, and then authorize the publication of the bid so that we can start advertising that and start the bid process. What does the funding look like right now? So I mentioned the $1.5 million. We have not been successful so far in securing additional outside funding. do continue to work with our legal counsel, who is actively mediating with PG&E right now. We still have not settled our PG&E lawsuit. And so it very much looks like the balance of the project is going to have to be made up with our funds. Right now, the rates are such, loan rates are such that it's roughly break even if we were to use our own cash versus, and what we would lose out on earned interest versus taking out a loan to pay for it. My recommendation to you is likely going to be that we take out a loan, lock in a reasonable interest rate. If and when the interest rate environment does change, the district will still have that cash on hand and can always pay off the loan if needed. But I'd like to keep as much cash as possible. That's basically where we're at on the fire station. We also have had a good conversation with Plymouth District Hospital and have agreed to have another meeting once we have a building permit in hand. But PDH is and CareFlight are extremely interested in getting out of the house that they're in Crescent Mills and coming back into Greenville. And so I anticipate that in the coming months, we'll have an agreement brought before you to approve some sort of lease agreement with Plymouth District Hospital. So that's kind of the overall there. I'm happy to take questions.
I have a question. It was just under the impression that there were funds received, and I'm not even sure whether it was insurance or what, for the construction of the new fire department emergency housing building. Did that not happen?
We did. So the fire station was what we would call underinsured. So it didn't cover everything that was lost. We did very early on, in fact, before I arrived here, which I came about 6 months after the fire had happened in early 2022. Before I had arrived, we had received a payout from the insurance on that policy. And in those early days, before we had the state grant and anything else, basically the district was operating off of those funds early on.
Was there no money available from FEMA? This seems like the precise thing that FEMA would cover, the replacement of a firehouse.
No. FEMA does calculations based on, number one, what the value of rebuilding would be in its current condition. The problem with that is that we're not building on the same site, which also causes them a lot of heartburn, and we are building back significantly larger. So what FEMA does in that case is they will take a look at what insurance you had, what the value of the replacement is, and in this particular case, FEMA had determined that we had received enough from a private insurance that there was nothing for them to cover under the public assistance.
And then one more, if I can just go back to your opening statement, Christine, about the responsibilities of Mr. Cox and the board. And I would like to say, first off, I'd like to echo Tyler's words and just sharing and expressing gratitude for all of you for stepping up into this position and taking on this challenge and working through the challenges that our rebuilding town is going through. But I'd just like to remind, that the board, while certainly should take into account the professional advice of Mr. Cox with his experience, but the board is also our elected representatives to do the will of the people, and the structure of that is that the board instructs Mr. Cox based on input from the people, and then he finds out the best way to do that. So I just wanted to echo, I just wanted to confirm, right, that that the board is empowered to make sure that whatever's happening, whatever's going forward, whatever plan or decisions are being made are in the best interests of their constituents and taking that into account.
So, and just to add to that a little bit, Daniel, I think that, the board definitely is the eyes and ears of the community, right? We should definitely be paying attention to what, the community is saying to us, and I don't think we've ever had a board meeting where it's like, hey, I've talked to so-and-so, this is what I've heard, this is what I've heard. But at the same time, we hired a manager to manage the district. The board doesn't manage the district. And everybody at this table is very capable of jumping in and getting operational, and we have to remind each other all the time that that's not our job. That's his job. So as a governing board, that's what we do, is we govern and we vote on that based on what we think, as represents the community. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's Adam's job to come up with the details of a project. That's why we hired him. It's his job to come up with ideas and to think outside the box and then present them to us. Not, we can offer suggestions to him and he answers the phone every time I call. But it's not for us to come up with all the details and get the bids and do that. We're not, that's actually goes against our board policies.
Good clarification, thank you.
To help.
Yep.
One thing I'd also like to note is there's been an immense amount of nonprofit support through the long-term recovery process, through the discovery phase, through the vision phase. I brought all the documents, so if anyone wants to leave. What's encouraging to me is the 5 things that are listed here are what the community said over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's when do they happen and how does that align with expectations of the community that draws tension is what I see. And ensuring what I would say is what is agendized on this meeting is representative of the community. I think where it draws tension is how do we get there, what is the sequence of it, and how do we fund these things? And so it's, some of these projects are 7 to 10 years out. Like, they're not immediate projects, and they're talking about multi-million-dollar projects that need support from outside entities to do that. And so what I see as the board is like prioritizing those, marching ahead, but holding the whole vision for what the community has said over and over again.
I'd like to add to that, Tyler. I think you're absolutely right, spot on. And it's something that I've repeated several times during board meetings, that the work that the Dixie Fire Collaborative team has done, and I attended a bunch of those meetings, where they've got sticky tabs up on, hey, what's the priority of the community? They did a lot of our legwork for us. That drove our strategic plan, and we leveraged that. So, kudos.
So not only that, it's also very important for those who have not done a lot of, grant writing or stuff like that. Not only are exercises and reports like that informative to agencies like ours, but they're pretty much a requirement in any large grant application. You need to demonstrate that you have done community outreach, that you have solicited feedback, and the good thing in our situation is that IVCSD doesn't have to recreate the wheel. We don't have to do that. We've been able and very lucky and secured millions of dollars, literally, because a lot of that footwork was already done by the partners that started immediately after the fire. So
Yeah.
we've been able to build on that work.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
While we're still on the Safety Center, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Patrick Joseph. I work currently as the recovery coordinator for the Dixie Fire Collaborative. And with regard to additional funding, we were talking about that $500,000 remaining for furniture and the like and things of that nature. That's a perfect opportunity for the DFC to provide what funds we potentially can in the form of a grant proposal when you get to that step. Again, no promises and things like that, but being able to support those things through the steering committee and bring a proposal up as you all are kind of rounding third and kind of nearing the end and trying to get home on that, that's where we can help supplement at that time. So I just wanted to offer that to the
I
board.
didn't hear what are you offering to do?
So that kind of from the Dixie
I know
Fire
who it is, I
Collaborative.
just wanna know what he's offering them.
$500,000.
To what?
To their
Negative.
building.
Put in a grant proposal to help offset some of that.
Alright, well, I just wanna know what it's offering. Is it gonna go build a new swimming pool or
No,
airport?
I'm just talking about the safety center, the fire department.
But the other thing I'd offer is, once again, for your judgment and intuition around all these things, I appreciate that. And what is what's been kind of clear from my seat is there's a lot of good, well-meaning and good-intentioned folks working with us at the county level. And to that point, it's at the county level, meaning they're looking east to west across the county as a whole. To have an entity like you all right here in our backyard that's able to provide focus and concentration on the projects as they emerge, because it does sometimes come down to a little bit of a tennis match of, well, what's happening in Greenville? I don't know what's happening in the county. Kind of going back and forth. But having responsible individuals on this board and being able to listen and kind of, again, use your intuition, judgment, and decision making on these issues has been invaluable to be able to roger those things up to the point that we can create longer lasting sustainable partnerships with the county, specifically as we look towards funding opportunities. So I just wanted to offer that. So thank you again.
You're a little more hopeful than I am about that.
Well,
Great of you to say.
yes, ma'am.
Slow change.
It's possible. But again, having an entity here though, it reinforces that without contribution, or at least whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And again, I don't necessarily think that everybody's going to agree on it, and that's fine. That's not the point of agreement. It's being able to have that dialogue to where we can have another special district board advocate potentially, or not, like depending on what that communication frame is. But just being open to it nonetheless is helpful.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have one more quick comment?
Yes,
before? I just looking at the website, it appeared that all of the board members have been appointed, not elected. Is that correct? So to your point.
There's a little nuance there. Some ran for election unopposed, and so it's appointment by lieu, appointment in lieu. It's not like an appointment as if they were appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So there's just a little tiny nuance there.
And I just, kudos for everybody showing up, but am I right that this is abnormal?
Very abnormal.
So if we want our voices heard, we need to show up. I'm Kira Wattenberg-King, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and we have the same issues with board and committee burnout. But we don't just get to all show up when it's important like this. We get to show up and be on the board and work with these folks and make sure our voice is heard with a board that should be listening to our community. So please, all of you, keep showing up. As I'm guilty of this too, I have not come to your guys' meetings. I've had my focus in the Chamber of Commerce, but it is all inner working, and we need an active board that represents our community that is elected by our community.
I thank you for that. I appreciate that.
And thank you for all of your service.
And I got to say that I have worked for a large corporation, like I said, for a lot of years. Worked on a lot of teams in a lot of projects, and this board has been a very productive board. I don't think I've ever worked with a better team. And that started when Bob was on the board, and Roger Cherry, Katie Banks, they were on the board, and it has evolved, and we actually like each other. So it's a really good board to be on. Otherwise, I wouldn't keep doing it. It's just been an amazing team and a productive team. Nobody's afraid to, and I'll speak for this team, that nobody's really afraid to do something, to make a commitment and to actually move forward with things. In Indian Valley, all of the sewer treatment plants have been refurbished. There's new pumps, there's new controls on every sewer plant in Indian Valley. 30% of the water pipes have been replaced in Greenville. The water treatment system in Greenville and in Crescent Mills are up to code and up to snuff. And the tanks have been cleaned. There's SCADA on the system. There's security on the system. We have a highly qualified water operational manager that does an amazing job. That works with the parks now to do the maintenance in the parks that wasn't being done before. So there's a lot of really cool things that have happened that I'm super proud of. And a lot of that is because the board, the board gets along and agrees. So it's not a bad board to get on. So there's almost always vacancies. If anybody's interested in being on the board, and wants to run for the board, it's a good board to be on. I highly recommend it. Thank you for that.
Clarification, 5 positions, no more than 5, just not 7, but 5 minimum.
5.
Just 5. Okay.
Right, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the fire station? All right. So the next priority project was the Greenville Park, and I am very happy and excited to say that this has come along. It was kind of inching along for a while, and now we're moving at light speed. This is a collaboration between Indian Valley Recreation and Parks District and IVCSD and hopefully Little League. I actually have a meeting actually today at 5:30, so I hope we're done. Today at 5:30 with Little League, and this basically will be a multi-$100,000 renovation and an upgrade to the park. It needs some TLC. The big items will be fixing the two ball fields, which are in relatively poor condition. We are trying to rush and get this done. I know that Little League is starting in about a month or so, but we are trying to rush and get it done so that we don't impact too much of their season, and they can hopefully enjoy it for the majority of their season. Right now, we're in the final stages of putting a scope of work together that we will use to bid out. Again, we'll need you to adopt that and approve that. So now, as I'm thinking about it, we probably do need a special meeting in April.
Okay.
We will get that out. We have some. We need to finalize everything, but we do have some significant pledges from IVRPD and Little League, and perhaps some others if we need to maybe go to the DFC or North Valley Community Foundation. I'm sure that they would be open to receiving our requests. But we do have significant, probably about $400,000 or so already pledged. Hopefully that will cover the project, but if not, we'll scrounge up the money. This is hopefully just one of many future upgrades to the park. There's already some smaller upgrades going on. IVRPD received a grant during COVID, and for I think like $170,000, I think it was, and they are currently in the process of purchasing equipment to supplement the current play zone by purchasing toddler-friendly play equipment, so that there's something for all ages there. So there's some little things going on with the big, what I'm calling the Greenville Park renovation, is happening very soon.
So I have a question. In that scope of work, are we going to include the maintenance equipment that we're gonna need for IVCSD or not?
So I think the biggest piece of equipment that we needed has already been.
Talking about a lawnmower.
Yeah, we've discussed the lawnmower and the need for that, so we'll discuss that to make sure. I think that's probably the biggest piece that's outstanding that we don't have. Which we have our park specialist right behind me, Mary. Mary just came back, so she's seasonal with us and just started back to get the parks all nice and.
Seems like alternatively you could hire somebody local to do the maintenance.
Yeah, so we do, that's what it's.
Mary's biggest addition was bringing cats down to our park to try to help out with some of our rodents.
There is that, and I wouldn't mind saying something about, just the rodent situation.
Sure.
Would anybody like to do that? Okay.
It's such a big deal.
Pardon?
I would love to hear.
Okay, I was hoping first to ask a question about the refurbishment of the fields and what that is going to entail, because maybe
That's
this will
what we
be.
call identifying the scope of work, and that's gonna be available in April. So we can't really, that's not up for discussion today, because they're still developing.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was
Yeah,
telling you.
but when we finish it, Mary, we'll go through it with you and Mike, make sure that you get your feedback on it.
Yeah, they're working on what that looks like right now.
Okay.
So if you talk to Mike or Adam offline, you can probably get a feel for that.
Sounds good. I do look forward to when our new mower arrives. That is one of the most critical. In fact, it's number one when it comes to dealing with rodents. And we have a lot of gophers. We have last year was a huge vole year. Everybody might have noticed that. And to the point that there were news articles about the vole problem in Northern California, which we all could have written that article, we know. But, so the mowing is strategy number one, as far as like making the habitat not friendly for them. And I don't feel too bad about that, because there's plenty of habitat in the, you know, the little bit of space that is the park. We don't have to have that be wall habitat. We want it to be nice for people to, you know, play in our kids to play Little League, and that's very important. Just going forward, I would love to see things like owl boxes, possibly in the perimeter to support a, you know, a control plan. And yes, we did have some feral cats show up. We are going to take them to the county TNR event coming up on the 29th. They'll get fixed, they'll get vaccinated, and they will have their ear tipped. And we've just decided that so far they've just made themselves working cats, because the rodent problem at the garage is over. Last year, you could hear them skittering around, and rodent droppings everywhere. We don't have that this season, and it's really, really great, especially since we live in hantavirus country, and so we really appreciate them.
Awesome, thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the Greenville Park? Okay. Anything from the board? Okay, Greenville water system. So yeah, part of this is like it's listed on here. Part of it is in closeout. Our big project that Diggett was working on here for the last several months was broken into two phases. They closed out phase number one some time ago, a couple months ago. Excuse me. And I think we are buttoning up. I think we did button up phase two today. So I think the punch list is complete. We're just doing a little bit of housekeeping, and that will be finished. We'll do our final walkthrough with the state of California, because they did fund a significant portion of that. I think the total project was about $4.2 million. The state funded about 3.6 or 3.7, and the balance came also from the state, but via Plymouth County. They had received a grant, and they worked with us to apply it to our system. So that project, I think, certainly addressed the most pressing issues on the water system in Greenville. I know that when I started and when Mike started, our fields crew was literally doing nothing except for reacting all day long. Reacting. Leak here, leak there, leak here, leak there. And now we are at a place where it is not like that anymore. There is room for proactive maintenance and other things. So that's good. The second part of the water system is that we are still working with FEMA on the replacement of the water treatment plant. What we are doing and what FEMA has conditionally approved is applying that to a different but similar project. So we have explained to FEMA that surface water treatment plant, first of all, it had not been used for 12 years prior to the fire. Kind of a waste of money. Actually, it was a huge waste of money. It was used for a year or two and then abandoned. Far too complex for our needs and required a level of certification that is not common among the local workforce. So about a dozen years ago or so, the district did switch back to groundwater. For everyone unfamiliar, surface water is water that you can see from the surface, like the reservoir. Groundwater is underground. So after explaining that and talking through it, FEMA has conditionally agreed to allow us to use the grant amount, which I believe, if I recall correctly, is about $4 million, is what FEMA valued the water treatment plant at. They are going to allow us to apply that instead to expanding our groundwater capacity. So we're in the process of identifying parcels on which to drill some new test wells. Once we identify a good site with some good water, we will then drill a normal production well, and then put another large tank somewhere else on the system. Big part of that is for redundancy. Right now, the entire Greenville system is served by one main that comes from the water tanks and crosses under the railroad tracks. Just takes one incident to cut the entire town off from all the water. So we'd like to put tanks somewhere else on the system. We are looking at North Main and this hillside over here. But the test wells will give us an indication of the best spot. It would be nice, things move a little bit slow with FEMA. They've moved even more slow lately with all the changes going on at the federal level. I don't have a good idea. You know, my guess is hopefully we would be able to build a production well and install a new tank sometime next year. It would be my hope. But that will be a huge step in resiliency, ensuring that we can deliver water around the system, but also giving us another, I think we're talking about 800,000 gallons?
Yeah.
That'll give us another 600, 800,000 gallons of water to use in an emergency. Earlier this year, when the LA fire started up and a lot of talk was going on about hydrants running empty, I kind of sent Mike into overdrive. He started doing some math and figuring out how long Greenville can last with our existing capacity and everything, and the numbers aren't great. So it is imperative to get some more water storage here in town as well as production.
So, just to summarize, there's 2 FEMA grants, one from the raw water line that comes down from Round
Yes.
Valley, and the water treatment plant that burned up, that we have an alternate grant on to dig a well and build a tank. Everybody on that? Got that? Good with that?
Any questions about water?
This is really encouraging. Thank you guys for all the work you're doing on this, and thanks for like the redundancy that you're talking about. It's really awesome.
We're also looking at tying in a lake to the storage tank, so that if you did have an emergency needing fire suppression, no water system can suppress the fire like in LA. Nobody has the capacity. You all have that lake. If we put an intertie between, between the lake and our storage tanks, make all the proper notifications, we're in an emergency situation, do not drink the water, we're filling that tank with the lake water, because it's coming right down to where my tanks are. All I've got to do is put in an intertie that's going to be separated so that there's no raw water going into potable water unless I direct it to do that. But you've got 12 inches of water coming from that lake, filling those storage tanks. You'll have continual usage of all your fire hydrants, and it would be nonstop. We wouldn't have to worry about the
Tank running.
the fire hydrant, the fire suppression side. Your potable drinking water side is a different story, because that is already been treated, or it's groundwater, and that's for consumption of humans. So that's sort of a different aspect of this whole project that we're looking at. The redundancy would be for the potable water, not for fire suppression. The fire suppression would be trying to get that lake into those tanks as quickly as possible.
Awesome. And that includes you guys like re-engineering that whole pipe system to bring.
There will be about a 20-foot section of piping that we would have to re-engineer. We've already got approval for, Adam's already got the approval for the FEMA grant. It was a little light on funding, so we're not real happy with the amount, but we have a very short distance to bridge between where that 12-inch pipe is gonna protrude by my storage tank, and then bridging into the tank is gonna be a very small portion of piping, 12-inch piping that I'll have, like, again, you have to have a physical separation, but in an emergency situation, I could put a spool in between 2 pipes, open a valve, and the lake water's coming right into the storage tank.
So it's only be used in an emergency situation?
Only in an emergency. burn the
It would be
potable.
non-potable.
It would be
but if
non-potable,
they go down
everybody would have to be
non-potable,
notified.
then It would be unlimited water.
Correct.
And then we flush the system afterward.
And then you'd have to go through, yes, you'd have to go through a whole flushing system and chlorination and everything else.
Okay, cool.
That will be a huge improvement because, as many of you remember, right as the Dixie Fire hit South Main, the fire hydrants went dry. And that some of that pipe, is my understanding, the original pipe that came down was plastic and above ground, and that's being updated, I'm sure too.
It was actually above ground, yep,
Burned up.
and burned up.
And we're updating that
That's what's
system.
being replaced.
Yeah.
Are we replacing it with metal below ground pipe or?
Iron.
It is, so we wouldn't even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be allowed to replace much of that line how it was existing, because the materials just aren't rated for above ground use.
Sure.
They shouldn't have been used how they were, but neither here nor there. So yeah, we're changing it up to be compliant and rated correctly.
Sweet, thank you.
Any other questions on the water?
Okay, so the next is the town center project. This is I call this a really big collaboration. While it might appear on IVCSD's agenda and I'm talking about it, this is definitely a project that a number of organizations have contributed to, both financially and otherwise. And so this idea, and at this point I can't even recall how, I don't even know how the idea was born. But at some point, a group, including IVRPD, the DFC, Tyler and his work with, I think it kind of collided with some of the housing stuff, I think, but there was this whole kind of synergy that formed. And I believe it was Tyler and the consultant who were working on the infrastructure master plan for the valley, which is a great document and again will guide us in future grant opportunities. I think Tyler and the consultant had identified an EPA grant, a federal EPA grant.
Can I give more context?
Please,
Sorry,
absolutely.
I was just,
Struggling. Help with that.
so, starting from the beginning, the community before the fire had a town hall, had a community center, had a library, had desires for, after the fire, had desires for a commercial kitchen or some type of commissary kitchen that was at the town hall before. And what we realized, going to Greensburg, Kansas, was our best opportunity to have those resources, a library, some type of town center building, commercial kitchen, some type of place for gathering, was to consolidate, to bring those spaces into one building, the town center. So when you think about the town center, think about what we used to have across town, right? So a community center over here, and then we had a town hall over here, and a library over here, but consolidating those into one building. That is best practices because it reduces the cost of the builds. It starts to bring the community together when we're gonna have less population after the fire than we did before. And it was a way of kind of bringing things together under one roof. That was the idea that was verified, brought to the forefront through the discovery, the visioning, and the town center planning phases, again, in these documents, that says this is important to us. We want to have a gathering space that is outside of the school, that is for all age demographics to be at. We want to have a library back into the community. We want to be able to have the crab feed. We want to be able to have these activities that are central to our community, right? So that said, what is the program that's here, and we want to have a building. Okay, great. Now we have that, who's going to lead it?
And that was what you were saying by the discovery, that was all of the community's input.
That is
Multiple aspects of
so much
all of
community
the
engagement, like so many, like talking to every, like,
before the fire.
yeah, it was, so after the fire, we did a series of community engagements. All of them are documented through the phases in here that outline what are the priorities of the community. We started 127 different projects. We narrowed that down to, I think, 21, that are now in the long-term recovery plan that is getting, hopefully will get finalized and adopted by the county. So this has been a 3.5 year long process that we've been working through that has been bottom up. It has been from the community. Okay. So we have this program, we have this idea of a building, we have a best practice. Now who holds that? County was like, I'm out, okay? They were not gonna rebuild the library. They didn't have the financial support to that. Okay, great. Okay, next up, IVRPD, Austin Community Center. They were like, we're not a good fit to rebuild the building because one is that wasn't really revenue positive at the end of the day. Number two is it required a significant amount of volunteer labor to do it. They also don't have the experience with maintenance or have staff or things like that. So that's where we started talking with IVCSD, right? That already has staff, already has existing buildings and infrastructure to be, what would it be like if Indian Valley Community Service District built the building? And through conversations, it was like, okay, that makes sense, right? It makes sense because of the core competencies of the organization. But what it's missing is IVCSD is not going to run a library. So we need the library as a partner in this project. They're not going to run programming. That's like Indian Valley Rec and Park is going to run the programming for it. So through that, in 2024, early, was the first joint effort to apply for a grant through the Sustainable Growth Center, I think.
California Strategic Growth Council.
Thank you. Somebody in the room. So this is a team effort. So wrote a grant to build this building, right? It was under what is called a Community Resilience Center. Now, at the end of the day, it's exactly what we need. We just had to call it a Community Resilience Center, which is a gathering place that was available for people in regular day, like everyday time, and also a disaster and emergency time. We just needed to build a building for it. So it was perfect. So we wrote a grant. Fortunately, we didn't get that grant. We learned a lot from that, followed up with the grant, talked to them more. Then we continued working with the team. We wrote the master infrastructure plan for the infrastructure, and that team identified an EPA grant to build this community center grant. So we rallied the team and the troops again and said, this is what the community wants. We want to be able to do this program. That is what the community is saying it needs in the building. So we did that. Now let me pause for a minute. Because one thing that was added that is getting interestingly contentious, I would say, is a pool. The concept of a pool being added to this building was added in through conversation and presentation of community members and Adam Cox, who had vision beyond just what we had before. A pool is a resource, literally a recreation-like pool, that nowhere within a 2-hour radius has. Families drive to Tahoe Truckee to go to a pool on a weekly basis to go swim with their kids. So what if we added a pool as a resource to the community in a community center that then attracted other people to come to the community, right? That would come for recreation events. Now, FRC has a pool, but it's not a full-length regulation pool. Ours would be a full-length regulation rec pool that you could hold competitions in. That would distinguish it and allow people to come. The other thing is it is a 4 seasons activity in which all age demographics can do. That is very unique in this community. We have a very separated kind of age demographics. So there's the school activities and then there's senior over there. Like, how can we actually bring those together into a healthy community? So that pool idea came in and got pretty contentious, interestingly enough, but has been a continual kind of marching as an idea of what we can do. If the community says we don't need a pool, it's not needed, it gets axed, right, at the end of the day. But what I would say is that pool, what we realize is that becomes a third redundancy in our fire suppression system from our potable water, number 1. Then our secondary is our lake water coming down, number 2. Then we have a pool that is a third resource, basically, for us to draft off of immediately. So when we're talking about fire suppression. So there's layers in this, right? Where the pool can be more than just a pool. It's a place for people to gather, it's recreation activities, and it's a place for us to draft in fire suppression if we need. So that town center project went through the EPA grant, and Andy, I think to your point earlier, the likelihood of this grant going through is, I would put 0 to none, is basically my perception of it. Now, does that mean we should take this idea that the community is wanted, desired, identified, went through application process, done early design and feasibility of, understood what it is, should we take that and throw it into the garbage? My perspective is no. But what it needs is it needs leadership to step into that. If no one else is going to step into this leadership position, like the county, like IVRPD, what I can say is, from my perspective, there is no one else that is going to step into the leadership position of building a community-style center at this size that has the capacity to do that. So then it's up to the leadership to really decide, do you want to? And I would say from 3.5 years of working, it would be incredibly sad to take this chunk of work and throw it into the trash can or put it onto the shelf. That would be incredibly sad. Now, is that easy? No. But one thing we got is a whole lot of resilience in this community and a whole lot of like, tell us not to do it and we're gonna go do it kind of thing. So where do we find funds for this project? SGC is releasing another grant that is gonna be in similar category. Do we look at other alternatives for funding or other mechanisms that we could actually get to actually do this type of building? 100%. But do we take where we're at and say, no, we're not gonna do it? I would beg that you don't do that.
So I'd like to add something just to for this board, and then I'll get back to you.
No problem.
And so, one of the things that you just said was great, and that is that, okay, if this town center is a part of our strategic plan, which it has been, then the scope of that is something that we task Adam with doing. That's his job. We're thinking outside the box. You know, what would be the right size to that? Taking all of this data and information that has been developed over the past 3 years on what the community has said they want. You know, he's the hunter, right? He goes after the money. That's what we hired him for. But then he also would right-size the project. What can we afford? What can we get? Rather than just scrapping it and saying nothing. And we could do that as a board. We could say, no, this isn't a part of our plan. We could do that. Or we could say, you know, sure, keep going for it. Maybe you can find a grant that would fund this. And if so, then what it would look like. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody want to add to that?
I had about 50 things to say, now that all got confused.
Hey, I'll give you a second.
So why
Okay,
do you
go ahead.
want Adam to do this? Why do you want the CSD to do it?
So,
The
can I jump in there? Can I jump in? I think what's important for all of us to know historically, one of the biggest challenges we have had since the fire is almost no organizations that were existing in the valley were legal. Were legal, both with the feds and the state. So so it ended up that IVCSD, IVRPD, who I will say we're working on this now, who really didn't have anything in place, policy procedure wise, all of those pieces, mostly because it was a tiny little functioning entity that was dependent on community members donating to it, not because it was not run well, right? So we are looking at very limited organizations that have the capacity to hold these projects. And we are all clear, none of these projects are going to happen if we do not go out and get funding. And we also have to be clear, I wrote since the fires 32 grants for this community. 32. I've gotten 7. We have to be willing, if we all decide as a community, we want this, we have to be willing to keep working at it and trust that eventually some grants, and with all the work, we keep getting better and better and better and better of being able to more easily submit grants, because federal and state grants are massively complex to write. So for me, I think we have to look at who has the capacity to be able to hold these things and then turn back around and get support from those who are operating here. Like IVRPD has no capacity right now to be able to take on a project like the town center. What we do have capacity is to support that entire process, whether we help write the grant, whether we offer services, whatever that is. And I feel like that's the challenge that we're all looking at. Because always pre-fire, IVCSD was water, sewer, fire, and parks. Like, isn't that funny? Parks, with IVRPD, Parks and Recreation. IVCSD has the parks, right? Which I hope they keep them. But anyway, so but where we can help as a park and rec is if they say we'll continue to keep the parks, how do we contribute to help with that process, right? So, but we don't have any strong entity in our community right now to hold these things. And I think it's
So
really important.
I'm gonna switch to Patrick, because you had something you wanted
Yeah,
to say.
just for some background and context, so the buildings that we were talking about, like primarily, like that would be incorporated that needed replacement, again, the town hall, which was owned by Plymouth County, and the library, so it's kind of 2/3 of what we're talking about here, and Plymouth County has indicated that they don't want to be in the building making business anymore. They don't want to have to maintain it, run the facility, so on and so forth. What they have expressed an interest, though, is having a place to be able to provide services that currently they're unable to, trying to shop that around a little bit so that they could have drop-in services even in our office next door or at the school, but it's been difficult to gather that level of enthusiasm around it. Other than some conversations of saying, yes, we would like to participate from the director level, like public health, behavioral health, social services, have all said that we'd like to contribute, we're just not necessarily sure how. The library director as well. So they had the property, they still own the property, but again, they don't want to rebuild on it. There has been indications, again, no promises at all, we want to be very clear on that, but indications of contributing to like a lease or renting space as a county contribution to the effort overall to say, hey, it's the Indian Valley community overall, we want to contribute to it, we want to be able to provide services there. It's just a little bit more than we can bite off to actually provide the funding for in the long term, because they received about $7.8 million in a general suit to PG&E, and then additionally plus or minus $3 million to bring just shy of $11 million in total for the things that they lost. Actually, private property insurance, or private property that they lost. To be these buildings plus a grader that was often talked about up in Chester to the tune of $500K. But then the insurance settlement went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And all told, we're just shy of $11 million. So that in and of itself is not necessarily enough for them to replace everything that they lost as well. That's where they wanted to just contribute maybe in terms of being a tenant. Back to the previous case around the safety center. Again, all well-meaning and good-intentioned folks at the county that want to support these efforts, but they're looking at it writ large across the county, not necessarily with regard to Greenville and Indian Valley. And to have an entity that's already existing, that already has a reputation, that has the ability as a special district to be able to do these things, and Chrissy, as you said, to right-size this. There's been a lot of drawings and a lot of suggestions with what this could be. That's all well and good, but to get it to the point of, there aren't concrete shops right around the corner that no one's ready to do this yet.
Right.
But to get it to that point, and what is reasonable, and that's where the ebb and flow of your community contacts come back in to say, we want this, we don't want that. The general concept is there, as it has been indicated, between some type of community center, some type of kitchen, a library. People want to sit down and access a library the way that they once did. Have everything from children's programming all the way up to seniors programming. But without having a filter between the community that lives here and all the way up to the county, it just makes it exponentially more difficult. And that's where the potential for your leadership and just to be the conduit. And like I said before, good, better, and different. It's not always like rainbows and sunshine. It's going to be difficult. But without anybody, it's tremendous. So that's all. I just wanted to provide a little background and context on what the county previously had here.
Hold on, I'll get with you two in just a second. You want to hold your comments, or do you have something you want to add or question?
Well, as an unelected board member,
It doesn't mean you're not legit.
right, but I'm unelected, but I do get most of my opinions. I don't form them all myself. I talk to people, community members, and that helps me. And I by no means think I have all the answers. But there's just a lot of red flags in this. Tyler just said this is not revenue positive, this building. So there's something.
Well, that old building that
Let
had
me correct that.
location was not revenue.
Okay.
Let me correct that. So the old Rec and Park building was not revenue positive.
But this new one will be.
The target of this is that it would be revenue positive,
Okay.
looking from a diversity of revenues, including the library from rental of that, potentially behavioral health, IVRPD having office spaces in there, and having the pool as a recreation and park for
Exactly.
private pool, private parties, potentially events, things like that. So does it look like a massive for-profit business? Absolutely not. This is a community-based center that would look to be net positive, but run at kind of a nonprofit mentality, not a for-profit mentality.
Okay, so let me go back to being a non-elected board member. So the last meeting we had, I looked into it a little bit, the responsibilities of a CSD, and it were those things, it was sewer, water, fire, lighting, usually a cemetery, things like that. So I'm not saying, and then Chrissy and Adam, I've talked to them a lot, and they talked about, thinking outside of the box, hiring Adam, who I appreciate greatly. I'm not down on Adam at all. I just think, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the more we get involved in more things, I think we need to be very careful about our budget. And the fire department is absolutely number one to me. And I think all other board members. I think that project should just go. I mean, as fast as possible.
Okay.
And then the
So-
remaining funds, though, should be protected to some, because this thing is so far from being able to support itself. Our CSD is not even close to being able to support itself. So protect what funds you have. And then, another thing, as I became a board member, very, not knowing hardly anything about this. And then we were looking for another board member, and I talked to a guy who I thought would be perfect for it, and then he considered it, and then he came and he said, I don't wanna call you and tell you why I'm, not taking this position. He told me about, how people jump on people, and, you get something goes wrong, and everybody's gonna attack. And I was thinking, wow, I really got myself in a spot where I could be vulnerable to some of this stuff. And then I was like, yeah, this is kind of a big deal. And so that's why recently I've been thinking of things in a different light, like the first, 5 months, I think I just sat here and learned. And now I have an opinion, and whether it's right or wrong, and I would certainly, if there was an election, that'd be great. If the community wanted somebody besides me, that's awesome, good.
So my strategy, just so you know, my strategy is to allow every board member to go around the table and offer up their prioritization on these projects. So, I mean, we can,
Let's do that.
no, we got still some, still community comment, so I'll say when we'll do that.
That's fine, but let's
But
do
we will
that.
get to that, okay?
Is there some reason why Adam couldn't work separately? Why does this, because it has to be under the CSD. The
That's
correct
the ask.
entity. They
So
need
so what I'm hearing, okay,
Okay.
so that's the ask, is that we are the organization, we're the community service district in Indian Valley, so that was just the ask. Now, this is all conceptual. There is no funding, there is no drawings for a town hall. Do we want to consider that? That's literally all we're being asked to do.
If you go, like the other reason I got excited at the last meeting is I looked into the Inflation Reduction Act and this grant that we applied for, and according to the internet, there's no chance in heck you're gonna get that grant.
Right?
And they're trying to get back a lot of the money that's already been dispersed.
Yep.
That hasn't been spent yet, so I would think grant, I mean, I know nothing about that. But I would think it's gonna be a little tricky. There isn't gonna be a lot of money being thrown around by the federal government.
I think you're absolutely
So,
right. And
so for us to invest a lot of money going after that, I feel like is a little much of a gamble. Okay, I'm gonna shut up for a minute.
no, thank you for that. So for this group, I just wanted to let you know, Andy's the one that called this meeting because he had things he wanted to say.
Thank you, Andy.
So I think, Carol, you were next.
Just to a couple points there. I thank you all for volunteering to be on this board. That was no dig on whether you were volunteered or not. I just believe boards should listen to their community and act on the community regardless of our personal views. That's a really important thing for me. I know we all have our personal views, but this community has spoken very loudly. And I'm gonna put this out there, and it sounds horrible, but we don't have any other choice. This town, this community has no other entity that can do this. What this leaves it with, and to clarify too, the ask is to say yes to the possibility of a town center. There's no commitment of money yet. I venture to say, Adam, tell me if I'm wrong.
You're correct.
You have the capacity and the gung-ho to go forward within your present job description and time to be able to set up plans and do this, as I believe Tyler does. There's no other entity, so this is a plea, if nothing else. There is nowhere else this is gonna go. And the ramifications of this not happening are that this town goes nowhere. And I know you guys have some more opinions or thoughts on this. I'm spending every single dollar that was given on the lawsuit for the way station for this town to start having four corners of businesses and for it to start having commerce and activity. That building still will be built because every dollar that was the lawsuit money is going into that. And that will be it. We have lots of other plans. We had, some housing plans, hotel-y kind of stuff, other commerce, other businesses. None of that will happen unless we have a center of our town that people can come to. So crazy huge pressure. But the ask is not even to put any money in yet. The ask is to say yes to the possibility. And so saying yes to the possibility of whatever that plan would be, and then going after that funding within the job and job description and time that you already have, Adam and Tyler and Sue and me, all of us, I'm sure, many other people in the room would help, Patrick, Josh, everybody, in getting the funding and getting the money. The county has money that's coming in, you have lawsuit money that's coming in. There are grants out there. None of us can tell what the government is gonna do or what other money we can come for. We don't know if we can get the funding for this. The ask is to say yes to the possibility. And
the answer would be a yes.
So thank you, that is
Just
amazing.
Be
Yes.
careful asking for money though.
For sure, right? I mean, that's
Because
hard,
that's where
but
it's
we
gonna get
need
tricky.
to consolidate going after the money that the county has because they have money for the library that can go towards that from their lawsuit money. We need to go after money that is already out there and show up at our board meetings to get that done.
Go ahead.
I would just make
Hold on. One at a time, please. I'll get to you one at a time.
Oh, no, I'm waiting.
I would just make a couple of comments. One is, I appreciate you being here and everything that you do, certainly. You are hugely selling yourself short. When you say you are a community services district and you're responsible for water, sewer, fire, and lighting, I've heard now. The reality is you are the tip of the spear to the rebuilding of Greenville, period. That is a lot of stress, I know that. To Andy's point a little bit as far as spending money, you can sit on your nest egg and we will be right back to where we were pre-fire in I don't know how many years, but where you have a failing sewer system, you have a failing water system, you can't pay your employees because, as we know, it will not sustain itself, and the amount of people that are trickling back in will certainly help, but it's not going to be what it was unless we have the core facilities that we had and we actually improve on those. So again, I respect you being here and it's a huge burden, not necessarily a burden, but a huge ask, I would say. But Adam is 100% right. You have to start looking at big picture things, and for me it's much bigger than even that and Greenville. If Greenville doesn't survive, my feeling is that the county does not survive, and I don't think that the board members have really felt that yet because I'll say it, I don't really care. They're in this dream world where they think that the county's gonna keep getting better, but we just keep doing the same stuff over and over again. And the real is, it's not gonna sustain itself. It can't. And so the decisions that you make and the grants that you go for and the outside thoughts of, these are the things that we can bring in, if it doesn't cost money, you have to know you're gonna have a tremendous amount of support from the community. And the ones that don't support that, I will be honest with you, are just ignorant and haven't taken the time to talk to you and go, okay, why are we actually doing this and what does it look like? So when you get bashed by them, ask them to educate themselves and maybe talk to some people that have the bigger picture in mind, because they're just not getting it. We have people that go to the board meetings from Portola and they're like, well, Greenville, why would we do this in Greenville? And it's like, well, you don't understand. This is gonna help sustain the county into the future. So, you know, the fire without being, having some rebuilding and the town rebuilding is a killer for the county. That's my personal feeling. Again, I just wanted to throw out there, you don't sell yourself short, because you are certainly one of the driving forces that has the ability to get this town and the county back to where it needs to be and move it into the future. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and it's absolutely not a question at all as to whether or not this town center is a good idea or necessary for the health and wellness of Greenville. I'm concerned, I keep getting this, I have this memory of walking up Shelter Island Drive in San Diego, seeing a guy on vacation staring at this like 100-foot yacht that was hauled out and getting worked on. And he goes, hey man, how much do you think that thing would cost? And I said, well, to buy it or to own it? And he said, oh, I didn't even think of that, right? And so my concern is that having historically, and this is not a judgment in any way, shape, or form of the job that anyone is doing now, but having historically watched the Community Services District struggle to provide the fairly basic services that it is sworn or mandated to provide, it is concerning that they would take something on this big just for their own health and well-being, right? For the own sake of burning out. And while this is incredibly important, if we can't get the poop to its destination, that's a huge concern, right? And so I think what I'm trying to think about here is, and it's been talked about, and this has to do a lot with the community involvement. I'm hearing you guys talk when you're like, well, everybody has these great ideas, but then who's going to come do it? Cricket.
Oh, you got the doers right here.
Right? We have doers right here, and so, but I'm talking about the community and some of these other organizations, and I think it's really important. I guess what I want to say is that it's really important to me. I feel it's really important that if the Community Services District is going to spearhead something like this, that we have a really solid plan as to who is going to manage it, what that is going to look like, how we're going, right, how that is all going to happen, because I think, because I don't want any of this to fail.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't want it to fail either.
Yeah.
I want it to happen.
So I'm gonna add a caveat to that. Is number one, the district is not struggling. The poop is getting where it needs to be. The water is getting where it needs to be. We have been on a continual improvement since the fire, and I'm super proud of where we are. And that has a lot to do with our management and our team.
And it has a lot to do with the fire, because we wouldn't be sitting here with this opportunity if it wasn't for the fire.
Right.
We need to be clear, and if no fire was existing, we all would be struggling.
In addition to that, we're looking at
Massive.
short-term, mid-term, long-term planning. That is something that is a big priority. It's why we are using the interest on our $7 million grant from the state to supplement the operating costs. It's so the district maintains its fiscal health. And it's something I hear from my fellow board members all the time. Are we being fiscally responsible? I think that's what Andy's true concern is about as well. We would not take on a project that would put the district at risk. That would be stupid to do that. We would take on a project if it was responsible and it was sustainable and it was funded. I don't know if anybody's heard the story, but when Susan and I were interviewing Adam, we said, you know, we need a staffing plan and we need you to go after monies. And he said, I'm a good hunter. So that's what he does.
Not literally.
He goes after funding. So, you know, that's what we would be looking for, is something that is responsible. And there isn't, I can speak for this board, there isn't anybody here that doesn't think that this project would have to meet that criteria. I think the one thing that I would like to ask the board is don't shoot down the idea until we see what it is. You know, and that we remain open-minded. We could be a very vanilla water and sewer company, but our town burned down. And I think that we're hearing, you know, from the people that came today, that they want us to consider other opportunities that might benefit the town.
And maybe
Yes,
it
go
doesn't.
ahead.
This will be very, very quick. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, so we've heard it multiple times today, we've had a lot of community outreach and we've talked to a lot of community members and stuff like that. We're rebuilding, you know, baseball fields, which is amazing. I thought from day one, that's the first thing we should have done. But the people that we're really forgetting are the ones that probably will bring the most people here, and that's the kids, in my opinion.
I agree,
I think that at some point we should go to this school while there's still a school, and hopefully it remains there, and go, what do you guys want to see? Because, so we had the pool at the end of Hot Springs Road. I learned to swim there, and I know about probably 500 or 1,000 kids that graduated here over a 20-year period learned to swim in that pool. It was nice because it was natural hot springs, you could swim in that thing year-round, but, you know, and it always made me mad when that closed, and, okay, your only option now is Taylorsville or Quincy, right? So I don't know that that's what the kids would say now. It might be a BMX track for bicycles or a skate park, which we haven't really discussed, but if you have 100 kids at the school that go, I want a BMX track, that might be something to consider, right?
Our parks board is pretty active. They got all kinds of.
So my point was just to maybe reach out to the kids and go, you know what are some of the things that you want to do and see?
And we are doing that. We just did a project-based learning activity last week for 3 days with the kids.
So the idea, just for the group, the idea is that, I'll get to you next time. The IVCSD maintains the parks because we own them, we physically own them. The parks manages the programs, but we are super connected. Right now, we've got a view that keeps us there. We're actually even helping with paying, because you were using the county to pay the employee insurance and stuff like that. ICSD is helping out with that right now. And so, you know, our goal is that we are joined at the hip. The Parks Board and the CSD Board are aligned completely, and so far it's been a beautiful relationship. So that's how that works right now, in case anybody had any questions. Go ahead.
So my thoughts here are, I mean, since the fire, Tyler, you've got great information, but since the fire, we've changed, right? As a community, we've changed as a community. We've changed as a community. And what we need to do is get together as a collective of people, children, yes, their input. You know, what's the, I don't know what the details are or what the actual information is, but I know a lot of people that grew up in this community, went away, came back to this community as adults, had visions of raising their children the same way, right? So we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose the charm that is in this valley. And I think it really needs to be revisited. what do we wanna see? What do we wanna grow into?
Yeah.
We have to change. There's gonna be change, but it's so important that we do, so maybe we need to go back to the drawing board on planning, and I'm looking over at Adam, cause sorry, but yeah, I just think that we as people need to regather. Spring's coming, we get outside more often, and we need to rebuild into the community that we wanna be.
I think one thing building off of that, Dan, to your comments, if we were under an old paradigm before the fire, I'd say no, we shouldn't take on the town center. If we were 6 months ago before Doug was at the table, I would have said, yes, go to the EPA grant. Today I'd say, no, it's not worth our time. The reality is our realities change in time. And right now, we have a reality where we have a significant reduction in population. We are still trying to hold the organizations that held it before from the leadership and running out of capacity to do that. So how can we create a new paradigm, come together, figure out new ways of governance structure, of working together? Andy, to your point around money and funding, is we are in a very different financial position because of the PG&E settlements that Sue had mentioned, right? The funding that we have here is very different than in 2 or 3 months when the PG&E settlements come through, the financial position of IVCSD will be in a different position, is my guess, right? So what we're doing is we're adjusting to the realities of the time as we move forward. But what I can say is the leadership that has really continued to step up has always done that with trying to do that in a way that's securing our long-term future, that doesn't risk where we can't do operations and maintenance, like we get the boat, we can't maintain the boat kind of thing. So doing that with the funding, that we're trying to do it in a way that sets up governance structure for the population that we have. How can we hold boards when most boards barely have a quorum? So we're in that movement right now, and what we're asking is the organizations need to reassess the paradigm, what they are, and potentially allow them to do much more than they thought they were before. So if we thought we were water, sewer, and fire, now all of a sudden we're community service. We're whatever the community needs in service of the community, and that includes the 2 bullet points of housing and town center. So that's what I'd say, is just allowing that to change.
I think that's great.
We have another community comment.
It may be premature, wrong venue. We're talking about the community restructure and all, but I was curious, have you reached out to any of the commercial owners down Main Street, the corners we know, the way, but like Old Anna's, etc., what the plans are there? I mean, because really, for the people that are here right now, having some of those things back would be helpful, but I wasn't sure if you were trying to coordinate with them. I mean, I'm sure it's...
So the CSD, you know, the CSD, we do task our manager, because he's a really talented guy. We task him with thinking outside the box, and he attends government meetings, right? He attends meetings at the county level, at the state level, even at the national level, and looks for opportunities that would benefit CSD. So that's what Adam does. As far as looking at businesses, that's the Chamber of Commerce. So they're a pretty active group.
Right.
The Dixie Fire Collaborative, like I said, we leverage a lot of their legwork, and they have done a ton of community outreach. So did you want to add something?
But yeah, I just wasn't sure if it dovetails a little bit. I mean, because not including that wouldn't be.
It has been at the table with Adam,
Yeah.
like.
I mean, I know it's really premature.
Like, is Ivan coming back, or what? I mean, is that what you're asking?
So
You wanna
a
know?
lot of the property has changed ownerships.
Yes.
We've been in contact with the new owners to
Yeah.
understand what their plans are in the downtown district. What I would say, and this was kind of, I was coming to this meeting to assess whether to tell them not to develop, basically. If IVCSD is not in the position to step forward into leadership of the community across multiple different sectors, I would recommend the private sector really assess whether they're going to build or not.
Well,
Because
it's
that's
absolutely,
critical.
I mean, I know, that's why I was wondering if anybody's talked to them, because it would be so up in the air to know what to do.
So,
Yeah.
and building,
You know,
building onto that, my philosophy, on behalf of the district is, I see our role, and of course the board, you direct me, right? You tell me that this is not the role that we want to play. But the way that I see it is, private businesses are very important. I have not done a lot of outreach because other members of our little core team have. Tyler, Sue, others, right? But what I really see IVCSD's role is getting the infrastructure to a place where it acts like a big "we're open for business" sign, so that business owners, if I'm a business owner right now, am I going to take the gamble to rebuild?
No.
I wouldn't.
No, right.
I mean, honestly, I get it.
No one wants
I
to
just
throw
wasn't
good
sure
money
if that
after
was
that.
being,
Right.
yeah, I was just wondering if that was being considered, or, because it would be a really precarious
Even on the
position
surface,
to
I
be.
think that, even on the surface, as a business owner that had a business for 22 years in Greenville, I think that it has to be presentable to a point where it attracts a business, to open up shop on their side of the property line. Right now, what's in front of their door is Mars.
Right.
So it's very difficult to do that.
We've taken some heat, especially when we have made presentations to the Board of Supervisors, and then, there's people there from around the county, people who maybe aren't, living in the reality of Indian Valley. A lot of people make an argument, well, you don't need to be doing this. There's no houses back yet. There's no businesses back yet. Well, that's been a bass backwards, my opinion. We need the infrastructure here. We need civic infrastructure, not just pipes in the ground. We need places for people to go. The post office opening, wonderful.
Yeah.
We need to build on that if we want to be a real community. That's when homes will be built and businesses will be built.
Yeah.
That's how we attract investment.
Can we
I
keep
think-
young
That's
people?
why we wanna have it look like, with children and younger community members. What do you want your town to be? We're retired, I'm retired. I worked, I did my time there, and I can volunteer, but as far as the design should be for those who are going to wanna create their life here.
And with IVRPD, just for those who don't know, we are in the process, we received a grant, we're getting ready to, from the community, loud and clear, we're opening up a fitness center, a community fitness center. We're bringing in a makerspace. We have access now with the school partnership using the culinary kitchen for classes and educational pieces. Those are the things, what you're referring, we have to start thinking in this vision. Will we be partnering with the school 10 years from now? Who knows? Nobody knows. What we know is these are the things we need right now if we are gonna keep people here and bring people in.
Yeah, my main thing was
So that's-
comfort to the people
No,
who were
it's great,
commercial owners.
absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't even know what to do, well, I know what I would not do. And until there's something more, something being built, why would you put a building back up that,
There has to be something to set a precedent.
yes,
Right.
exactly. As long as you guys were kind of being involved with it is what all I was thinking.
So-
I'm
to
gonna
that-
give it just a few more minutes
Yeah.
and then I wanna circle back around.
What I think that we have to, for me, why I've been continually at the table in this community that I deeply love is because I deeply believe it has the potential to do this. Why does it have the potential to do it? Because I've continually seen private individuals, so we have private individuals investing in a housing model to build to sell so young families will go. So people are taking their own hard-earned money and putting it into the community. We have individuals that are taking their hard-earned money and putting it into businesses. We have IVRPD that's putting it into maker spaces and activities and things like that. So it's each of the entities stepping forward in the way that they can for the community in which they can. So for water, sewer, those are critical infrastructures and should be first, and public safety should be second. And then after that, key civic buildings come in. And each of these things stair steps to the next thing. Because if we don't, what I've seen where it stalls is when everyone else is waiting for the next person to move. Like the businesses are waiting for the roads to be in. We are lucky that businesses are willing to step forward and know that the roads are going to be in. But if there's real clarity that an entity is like, nope, I'm not touching that, and we have no pathway for it, that's when it will stall out. So it's everyone continually at the table saying, yes, I'm gonna march this forward in the way that I can.
Okay. So I'm gonna loop it back.
Yeah.
We were talking about the town hall center, and I believe that, my notes on that, it's part of the long-term recovery plan. There's been a lot of community input that is what the community wants. Started out as a resiliency center because there's been several grants that have been written and requested, and that's what I'd call the pool's part of that. I think, Andy, a while back you said, you know, why is Adam looking at the town hall? It's because we are the community service center. I mean, we are the community service district, that's why. Any more input from the board on this particular project? It's stalled out, we don't have funding for it, it is conceptual.
I think we all wanna see it happen.
Okay.
We would all love to see it happen. As negative as I sound, I'm actually very optimistic. I love this community as well, and would you do, really would like to see it come back. But I wanna make sure that what we're doing helps
Is
create
responsible,
that.
sustainable.
So like the
affordable.
businesses downtown, I don't even understand why we would be at all involved in anything to do with those. I mean, we wanna be open, we wanna keep costs low, we wanna provide a service at a very reasonable rate without the $6,000 hookup fees. We wanna be accommodating and help in any way, but I don't know if we should go.
And I think, Adam, that's
This is a private party.
that you learn from these other meetings that you attend as a government, because we're a government agency, right? So that when you go to a county meeting, or you go to, these Dixie collaborative meetings, or the Lake Alamo Foundation, that's where you're getting this information about what the businesses you're thinking in Greenville, right? Isn't that where you're gathering this?
Yeah, there's a lot of information that is flowing. Unfortunately, it's between a small group of people and a small group of organizations. But there's a lot of information that flows back and forth that informs what steps that I think I should take in order to bring an idea to you.
Okay.
I just have a couple comments, on the Greenville Town Center. The idea, the concept, I like, but I think there's some big issues there that we need to look at the demographics of this town and where it's going. Our schools are in some real serious business right now, and there's still rumors coming out about closing Greenville schools and just having a charter school for their tenure. That worries me. Frankly,
Is there any truth to that?
I don't know.
That's
I haven't heard anything
that's
about
everything
closing
for
the
our
elementary
community
school.
right
Okay,
there.
so here's what I'm saying.
Rumors.
Those make me very nervous, those kind of rumors. And
That'd be horrible. That'd be the.
it would be a death knell for Greenville.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something we might be premature on going with the town center.
We don't, it's all,
I understand that, Chrissy.
we're not moving forward with
Yes.
anything, because we can't.
I would mention that everyone in this town said that we were gonna die and wither away when the hospital closed also, and we were still going fairly strong, even when it doesn't mean it wasn't a hit, but.
Why would all these young families stay here then? There's no jobs.
Well, I think you're
They
gonna have a
come here
charter.
because they wanna raise their family here, because they like
Don't
the
lose the
deal.
heart.
And now all of a sudden, this school down here has this momentum with some amazing group of kids, athletes and sports and pride in their community. And I just talking to somebody today, and they said there were 5 new babies coming
Yeah.
to the deal, and I'm like, hey, we want these kids, we want the families to think that that park, that people care, that park is amazing, their sports, we are supporting them. But when all that fails and goes, and your kids are gonna go to Quincy, why would,
But again,
That's a
I'm gonna say,
struggle.
we should not be spending our
think you-
time
I don't think
wondering
you
what
have
the
to.
school district is doing, because at the end of the day,
Right.
everyone in this community will be committed to make sure there's a school here.
Yep.
It may not look the same way it has, but
Right.
there will be a school in this valley, period.
And there you go.
So-
That's good, and that's,
Right.
Yeah.
that's
I
what I
think
look to
we
do.
need need to look at the demographics, of town, how it's going, and its progressions is very important on supporting the CSD also, and the sheriff's office and fire. So we need to look heavily at those, and in going through and prioritizing needs, it's gonna be hard.
For what kind of indicators? What would we be looking at the data for?
I would think the amount of housing that's being built, jobs that have come.
See, but again, I think that puts us back in a position of we're either waiting on everyone and their mother to make up their minds on what to do so that we can trail behind them, or we act in a leadership capacity to jumpstart that.
Well, I see that now, but I also see, okay, let's build that town center to $10 million.
Or two. I mean, it's just,
Well-
it's gonna come down to the funding. I mean, are we gonna take money away from the
Exactly.
fire hall to build the town
No,
hall?
no.
Probably not. I can you just heard the boards going, no, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right? So
Fire
it's,
hall should be
so-
a flagship.
so we were applying for a $20 million grant. We don't think that's coming. What is potentially coming? We have to wait for that, right? Before we can then right-size the project. Does that make sense?
Another thing, a right-sized project, talking about indoor swimming pool, I threw that on the table last year and said, we need an indoor heated swimming pool, because our kids don't have anything to do here in the winter. We senior citizens would like to go swimming so we could not have heart attacks. Been there, done that? Yes, you have. But the location, I think you need to look at the location. And I know Adam would like it at the town center. I would like it close to the schools, so the kids have easy access and it can be utilized for PE programs. So, when looking at that, do we need to build all of that into a town center, or do we separate it out and build it in stages?
We go after the money first, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with that.
We all agree it's
Just
a
be careful
wonderful
how much-
idea,
Okay.
but we need to see the money first.
And everybody's got an opportunity to weigh in on all 5 of these at the end. So our last, project, let's move on to, housing and mixed use.
Wait,
Mary's got something about
Have you approached the, 4-H, Girl Scouts? Who else?
Girl Scouts,
The rodeo club, whatever? Is that, there's your kids that are gonna use it.
Yeah, for sure.
it goes back, we need a newsletter with an output on it for input.
And I don't know whether 4-H only volunteers or gets free housing, but, they might use a town center for meetings.
Yeah, for sure.
Fundraisers.
Yeah, fundraisers, for sure. Okay, I think it's a good point. Moving on, housing and mixed use.
Okay, so, housing has been something that, I think the board has supported, at least in theory, for a while now, and I say that just because you have authorized the purchase of 3 properties, right? We own 3 residential properties now, 2 of them are adjacent to each other right here on AU, and then 1 on Hot Springs Road. They were pretty good deals. I think that the board agreed that if we weren't gonna move forward with them, that we could, put them up for sale. However, since we do control the properties, again, with the help of a group of very dedicated people, and that's really been boosted by the creation of the Plumas County Housing Council. If you're unfamiliar with this, it is a working group, kind of spearheaded by the Almanor Foundation, I think underwritten a little bit by the Almanor Foundation to get it up and running. And it's basically made up of a group of representatives from both public organizations and private business, all throughout the entire county. A lot of large employers, SPI is one of them, who are meeting to discuss synergies and to discuss project coordination and to discuss things like having a comprehensive plan for housing in this county. So with all that said, we have been able, IVCSD has been able to take advantage of contacts that have been made through the Housing Council. And there is, this thing's kind of all over the place, but there is, I think, an opportunity for the district to build up to 9 housing units, a mixture of 1, 2, 3 bedrooms. And I think the intent of this, so there's other organizations right now and individuals who are building to sell, right? That's needed. What is also needed is housing to rent, housing to be able to lease, because you either can't or don't want to buy. And so I'm of the opinion that IVCSD can really fill that void in Greenville in particular. The county has no plans to build housing. Plymouth, the housing, what is it? The
Community Development.
Thank you. Plymouth County Development Commission, which runs the apartments on either side of town, has no funding or I think interest in building anytime in the near future. And there's certainly a lack of affordable housing for the workforce. So we have been able to identify the possibility of building up to 9 units in different configurations, using, other than some staff time, basically using no district resources. Again, this is in the very early stages. I have not a lot of details to share with you. There isn't a project for you to approve or to vote on. The real idea here is that we are continuing to put together and test the feasibility and shoot holes in the feasibility to see what works. I think we've made some really good progress. We have some really good ideas. There's definitely some level of viability. And even more recently, in the last week or two, there has been kind of an opportunity that presented itself that Tyler's been assisting with that could potentially build significantly more than 9 units. Significantly more. So basically what we have right now are 3 parcels, and in the next few months I would like to return to you with a plan in some form for how to build them. This project in particular is this one, the town center is obviously very important. We don't want to build something that we cannot maintain. The housing is very important in a little bit different way, in that we don't want to build something that people can't afford or that they won't live in. And so there's a lot of homework going into this particular idea. There's a lot of interest from other organizations in partnerships or in taking advantage of economies of scale. And that's basically where we're at. There is not a solid project other than the potential 9 units that I just mentioned. And why 9? It's because by right we can build 3 units on each of the 3 parcels, 3 times 3. But other than that, there's a lot of homework being done to figure out the feasibility. How do we build the project without pretty much any money from the CSD? So, i.e. using grants or debt, loans. But then if you take out too much in loans, you have to charge so much in rent. Is it going to be affordable? So it's a balancing act. There's a lot of math, a lot of homework going in on it. And we do hope to come to you with some sort of proposal because housing for rent is needed.
Can I say a couple things on housing?
Sure.
Is there time? Sorry.
No, it's a new topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, new topic, changing hats too. So a couple things. Right now, I'm working with the Almanor Foundation under the housing, basically moving the housing initiatives forward. That means if you look at housing, it's like a giant pie. We have renters, we have owners, we have 80% below AMI area median income, you have low income, you have higher income, you have seasonal housing, you have all this diversity of housing stock that's needed across the county. So through the Housing Council, we've developed a team that we're ever trying to get more team members onto it, a working group that includes for-profit entities, it includes nonprofit entities, and it includes the county, are all at the table working on housing together. Specifically for IVCSD is in rental housing. Specifically, there's market rate rental, and then there's typically what is understood as subsidized housing. So Section 8 or voucher-based programs that is low-income housing. There's this whole group in the middle here, which can be subsidized through grants and things like that, that makes housing attainable. And that's specifically where Indian Valley Community Service District can come in. Because that's different than what the Community Development Commission can do. That's the housing authority within the county. They're targeted at 80% and below AMI. So if we can look at 80 to 120%, that's most of our workforce, to be honest. And most of our workforce before lived in Greenville and then commuted to Chester and Quincy.
Okay.
So if that's the case and we need this type of housing stock, what I'm looking for today is interest and intrigue by the board to continue looking at housing options that could be developed. So starting with these 3 sites and 9 units, because right now there is a clear there's money in the bank, so to speak, from a grant that is seeking a home for housing. And what we're trying to figure out is what does the program look like, and does IVCSD have the interest and willingness to step into that program to be able to build housing for 80 to 120% AMI, or workforce housing. And so what I'm looking for is whether there's interest and intrigue by the board to continue moving forward on housing, or if this is like, nope, we're no longer interested, because if that's the case, there's a significant amount of money sitting right now that will not be used, to be honest.
Can I just expand on that a little bit, Todd? I mean, so there are millions, literally millions and millions of dollars right now that are unable, for a variety of reasons, to be fully exhausted in this county. And the state is not in the business of just letting jurisdictions keep money that they can't spend.
This is money that's been awarded.
This is money that's been awarded to Plymouth for use in Plymouth County. So, you know, it now becomes a question of, are we really willing to let $8, $9, $10 million just leave because we don't want to use it? That's the real question.
Can I say one thing before I have to leave for Follies first? You know, we have been in meetings with the Housing Council and the Foundation for, well, with the council for a year and the foundation for many years at this point. And there's not a large employer in our county that you don't go to without them saying one of the main reasons that they cannot retain employees is because there is nowhere affordable for those employees to live. And so to keep and get more butts in the seats at the school so that our schools thrive, so that our community thrives, as Tyler has said, housing acts as a catalyst for a lot of things. We have to figure out a way to have more housing that is marketable, that we can actually advertise and say, we have this housing stock available, and we can advertise it to our big employers so that they can use that to go get employees for the hundreds of positions that are open and empty in the county right now, and get more people here. So, thank you for your time.
Thanks,
Yes.
Josh. I get a question. Has the Almanor Foundation approached City of Chester and the Chester community service district or the Quincy area about doing these buildings?
Yes, so we've,
What are they doing? What are they building?
well, depends on who you talk to. You know, there's not a city of Chester, so, and
Their sitting body, whoever they are.
sure, their community services district. We have been in discussions with like Seneca Hospital on their needs. Last summer, they said they could easily fill 17 homes tomorrow if we had them available. We've talked with Collins Pine, we've talked with PDH, SPI. They have some projects in the works, but things like the hospitals can't actually build housing. They might have property, they might have a piece or a part of the puzzle, but they can't devote capital to something like that.
Specifically, the funds that we're looking at, that would be the catalyst for this housing stock, can only be done on fire affected, like basically burn.
So it's fully designated
It is
for fire
designated, yep.
affected
It's
people.
under a specific fund that has already been
Well, that's nice
underutilized.
to know, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
nice to know.
basically, if it's not you, the options are very limited, is basically what it is. And so this is an opportunity to do what you were talking about doing on 9 units and potentially step forward in a way that is financially 100% stable in its revenue because it's underwritten by grant sources, and then you can have rents be brought down and still have revenue positive. And that's what we're running the finances on.
Who would own the properties and maintain them and insure them?
IVCSD would.
So right now, what we're looking at, and again, this would come in your details package to vote on, right? But kind of conceptually, what we're looking at is there's two different options. One, IVCSD could own them directly. Another is that we could set up a 501c3 corporation that the district controls. Either way, however it's developed and held, the intent would not at all, and I am not arguing for us to get into the landlord business, strictly the housing development business. We would ideally put out an RFP to work with a developer who would build the homes and then manage them and take care of that. I don't want to get at 2 a.m. to go plunge someone's toilet. That's a little too outside of our wheelhouse.
Right, so I take it that we're looking at this as being like separate from CSD's day-to-day business and basically its own.
This would not be a core operation of the district. This would be more on paper than anything else. We get them built, we hand the keys over to someone who's gonna manage them, and we watch the community thrive. This is not about the CSD, this is not about the CSD hiring. Yeah, this is not about the CSD hiring maintenance workers and a property manager, and we're not doing that. That's not what I would suggest to you.
I look at this is that we are government, that we're going after funds to build within the fire ravaged community.
Is there something within that grant that would not allow it? Okay, so we acted as the agent, building agent, so to speak, which you would. Is there something that says at the end of it being built, completed, you have your CO on it? People can move in, can it be sold, or is there something within that paperwork that says, you can own this for so many years?
There are stipulations on it. We're getting clarification on for how long. It might be 15, 20-year covenant on it. But the purpose of this CSD doing this, it was done in Paradise as well. So this isn't, it's not radically different.
Paradise is a whole different kettle.
Yeah.
Well, not really
Well,
different. I mean,
I'm saying from operations.
Same concept, right?
Getting some answers like this is definitely making one think beyond just building.
For sure, and that is
What's the long-term?
basically what I would say Adam and I'm here for is to listen whether the board is interested in pursuing it further. If it's not, then that's when we need to pivot. We don't have a time frame to do something. We don't have a time frame to lag on this because of the funds and what we're trying to do. And there's another option at the table as well.
I have a question, and this applies to the the town center too. Why is it that it has to be the CSD that gets this funding?
Yeah, so great question. So the program has stipulations that it has to be to LMI, low and moderate income populations that are income verified. The program went out to the public and did not get fully subscribed, so it still has to fit within a parameter. So the best fit that we could do is by it needs to either be a nonprofit entity that does housing development, a governmental entity that's willing to step into it, or a housing authority. So it could be the CDC that steps into it, but they're already at capacity, right? So if those are options, so there's only a small group of organizations that can step into it. Within the fire affected, India Valley Community Service District is the only entity that is willing to continually own or operate buildings, basically hold that space. So you're looking confused. So
I'm listening. So that's stipulated. Those three entities that could do that's stipulated in the grant.
No, there's stipulations in the grant, yes, of what type of entity. So that's one thing. So there's a container. The second thing is Indian Valley Community Service District is the only entity that has expressed interest in housing to date and acquired property. Those two match up in a time frame that's very tight, but also aligns with the mission, vision, and core values of what they're setting out to do. So they've said, we want to take on these 3 sites.
So there has been no other NGO or that has expressed any sort of interest in doing this. That's the...
To date, our biggest challenge in the county is NGOs' unwillingness or not, they're like mission creep to step into housing. To owning property, title to property. We've talked to Feather River Land Trust, we've talked to, even Sierra Institute's, their projects, they don't own the property for it, right? So, again, we're at a line in which there's some money over here, that housing, and everyone's saying, yes, that's good, but no one's willing to step forward. What I've seen IVCSD do so far is say, yes, we're willing to do 3 homes, is basically 3 lots. 3 lots. Yeah. You purchase the lot. So.
What is the time, how much time are we looking at here?
The grant runs out in 2029. So that's when it has to be stipulated. 2028 is when this is one of the most cumbersome, it's not easy. If you want to talk about this, it will take about 6 hours of us downloading. But I'm happy to do it.
We're probably a little in the weeds, Tyler.
What's that?
We're probably a little in the weeds.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, the only reason I ask is because I'm trying to explore the possibility of this happening without burdening the CSD with these extra tasks, so that you can focus on your other thing, right? So and we can get into the weeds, somewhere else. But that's what I'm trying to explore, right? Is how do we accomplish this without having to make you guys do this, right?
Because the suggestion keeps getting posed, though, and I have yet to see anyone else in the county step up, right? I mean, the county, until a few months ago, couldn't even make a decision on how to spend their Dixie Fire dollars, right? Until they finally gave us $1.5 million, minus the $10,000 for feral cats, which was great. So the county and its affiliates thinking that they're going to step up and do anything is laughable at this point.
One thing, Dan, to your point, and Adam, to your point, is that right now you're asking, is there another entity, right, that could step into this or do this? But you're also looking at this board as the responsible entity for doing the task. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
What we're saying is the Almanor Foundation is paying for my time to figure this out. Tracy Ferguson is at the county trying to figure this out together. Adam's at the table trying to figure this out of what can actually work, right? So it's not the board's responsibility to figure this out. What it is all of the joint effort between the Almanor Foundation that has taken on housing and kind of moving that forward. Indian Valley Community Service said, yeah, we're willing to step into that role. And that would get handed off to the developer, which would be the entity for the execution.
And I think the ask today is that do we, as a board, say, shut this down, we don't want Adam working on this? Or, you know, go ahead and continue, looking at it. And when you're ready to come to a proposal, we'll vote yea or nay. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And I think that's something that I said at the beginning of the meeting, you know, that's something as a board, do we shoot down a proposal before we see it? Or are we gonna, be interested and say, you know, what's gonna be the best thing for the community? And I think that's bottom line what we're after.
Yeah, we can get clear details later.
That makes sense to everybody?
Point that we can do that.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Is there any more discussion on housing? All right, so let's go around the table with, our prioritization of these 5 items from the board. Are we good with that? Andy, you wanna start?
Yep. The fire station is one of the biggest ones, one that we all agreed upon, we voted 6 months ago, I don't remember, but that's a big one. I think when some more funds come in, I don't think we should look for financing, I think this should just be built. I think this needs to happen. The firefighters are restless, and they should be. I mean, you have a great group of people trying to do a great thing out there, and the money's there, it's gonna happen, let's make it happen. Let's do it, so that's
Number one.
that's A. That's the first item, and that's my opinion on that. The park, the Greenville Park renovation, I'm big on that, because it's all about those kids, trying to keep families here that don't have any other reason to be here, other than maybe a little sense of pride and, something kinda cool going on for their kids. So that's huge. I mean, I actually kept talking about AstroTurf on one field, so if it snowed, you went off and they could play on a sunny day. We always have sunny days, but I'll stay out of that. That was just an idea. I mean, I really wanted to go big down there, something really cool for kids. So those families, that if the school did shut down, they'd be like, well, we're gonna start up this new school, then our kids have a great group of friends, their athletics are super cool. Anyway, we're moving on. The water and sewer system, yeah, the grant's there, a new well and a new tank is fantastic. Mike's really sharp, his raw water, you know, intertie, he talks about for fire, and I'd asked him about that, and I'd said, you know, how big a deal is that to purify the lines once it's been contaminated, and apparently it's not that big a deal, so what a great idea that is. I mean, that needs to, the money's there, I'm not sure why it takes so long to make it happen. I know the engineer's doing stuff, but it just seems like if it was a private party, if it was one of us and we really wanted to do something, we'd go on a piece of property and there's somebody be drilling a test well, and it would happen.
The big problem with FEMA is that they just have layers and layers of review.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's pretty easy. I get a note here that the Dixie Fire Collaborative is willing to donate up to $500,000 to the fire department. That's pretty cool. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I think that's what I heard. That's what I asked.
Awesome. What Patrick said.
I thought that was that was nice, that was exciting. And that fire department, we don't have anything to look at. I mean, they did the sewer and water, and those are things, you really can't even see it, but you build that fire department, you come here and you see something has happened. A lot of things have happened, people have tried to, you know, done these studies and things, but there's nothing for anyone to see, so it's really hard to be optimistic and, like, oh, wow, we're really going. I don't know why. I don't know.
No, I hear you.
So that's exciting. When we get into the town center, I think I've voiced my opinion on that. I'm I'm not against it, I'm excited, I mean, I want the community to go. I don't understand why, some of it, I don't even understand why we would be involved in it. If a private party's gonna build some things on the four corners, what does that have to, what are we supposed to, what is our involvement in
I
that?
think what she was,
Every business that comes in here, we're gonna go,
I think what she was saying was that, you know, she's using her,
Right.
her, settlement money
right,
to build a business back,
right.
and that, they want the town center as well.
So the town center, I see,
Right.
I guess
That's
that
what I
makes
heard
sense.
Carol
I
say.
think a good way to look at that is, as, when I look at IVRPD and IVCSD and these public entities, it's how do we have to be looking through the view lens of anchors, right? So there's, the town center is ultimately will be a public anchor.
Something people would
The
see.
post office is a public
I like that.
anchor.
Yeah.
I like the
If you
ABC.
have these anchors, businesses then are going to say, we'll build. If you don't have any anchors, businesses are taking the deep risk of bringing back their
As
businesses.
Josh said, he said, you know.
So our job is to find what are the anchors
The moon.
and how do we
Right,
move
if
those
you look
forward.
across the street at a
Like
town
the library
center,
or the-
that might sway businesses to come back. I think
No,
that's what I
it's
heard
certainly
Carol
be better
about.
for the business, that's a fact, there's no doubt about that. But does that mean that the community services district, becomes vulnerable with their money, maybe possibly putting so much in that it, I get, you
Well, that's
gotta
what we
make
would
things
vote on.
happen.
That's what we
Okay.
would vote on, is that we would vote to either, you know, to either accept a grant that he went out and found for, or do we use district money or whatever, and that's not being proposed at all. It's just the concept of this
Okay.
now, and then when it comes to the
Right.
table, then you vote yes or no,
Okay.
okay?
And then the last one is housing, mixed use, and we all know how I feel about that, so I've been negative enough, and I don't wanna bring anybody down anymore. But I've talked to a lot of people about housing, and but then I came and talked to Adam, and Adam told me about this money that was sitting, and possibly very little to no money would be used from the CSD, and if
So let me ask you this,
3-unit
if Adam came up with a proposal that said, there's however much money in grant money, how much money? 50?
8 to 10 million.
There's a lot of money.
There's a lot of money that's been awarded to the county that's
Right.
sitting there
Yeah,
not being
yeah.
applied for.
Yeah.
If he could come up with government money to fund a program that would build 9 units, would you vote yes or no on that? I mean, and I think that's the question. If he came up with a proposal that did not, that satisfied you, that did not risk the district or cost the district any money, would you vote yes or no?
Depends on what they are. I don't want 3 units on one of these lots. I think that's ridiculous. We have a whole town missing homes, and we're gonna go cluster up 9 units on this little spot and cluster 9 people there? I know, I'm against this.
6 plus 3.
I could be totally off, but that's my opinion.
I think part of that is long-term costs. We have that in loss.
Yeah, those are gonna be a loss. We know what our housing, when you have housing, we got some down here, we got some down there, and we got some out towards the park. And we see what how those are
They're
maintained,
gonna
how
have
they
to work
last.
for 2,000 a month anyhow.
Please don't
Yeah.
speculate. I mean, I'll bring,
Okay.
I'll bring, I think there's a lot of suppositions being made to justify a kind of a no answer
It's
here.
all kind of related. I
Yeah.
hate to have.
I'm open, I didn't say no. I'm just,
I'm gonna put it down as a yes, maybe.
yeah, I'd just like to see it go maybe in a better direction than a.
Into this meeting, if we're not gonna let Adam, I mean, if we're gonna shoot down a project before he even issues a proposal, we shouldn't, why are we paying?
Right.
Send him home, you know?
When the idea is presented, we can say, oh, that's a good idea, or it's not a good idea. And then we can ask more questions later, review, then decide. I like informed decisions, I want all the information,
Yep,
you know.
and I think that that's our expectation. I mean, that's what he's given us so far.
Yeah.
Is once he gives us a proposal, it's, you know,
So
it should have eyes dotted and T's crossed.
And I'm trying to serve the board as best I can. I've been hearing for the last few months from several board members, you want more information, you want more information. Totally acceptable. So I'm trying to calibrate how much information I give you for what's coming down the pipe so that you know and you're not surprised. Trying to balance that with also letting you know that I'm not asking or expecting you to make a decision right now until you have all the information in front of you. So that's been, I think, one of the frustrations for me is, you know, do you want me to give you more information? You know, are you going to bring it on the back end, the front end? What do you want?
You want it up front.
Okay, which is fine then.
We don't want to spend too much time working on certain things that we might all.
Well, and that's fine. I guess my request to the board would be though that you have to, if you're wanting that information up front, then you have to be okay with not having all the details. You can't have both.
So, okay, so I get you, Randy. I'm gonna go next, and then we'll just continue around the table if that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go with, the fire department still remains my number one priority, and that all of our funding should be focused on building the fire department. That's gonna be the number one priority for the district. The park renovation, I think that working with the Parks Board is super critical, because, again, for community confidence, I think that the youth, keeping young people in the valley is critical for the valley to thrive. And I think that the parks programs and the park renovation is really, really important. I would not be opposed to putting some district money into that park renovation. I would not be opposed to that. Just to say that up front. The water projects, I'm a go on those. The surface water project coming down, those are FEMA grants anyway, so yeah, move forward with those. The town center, I know that's an unfunded concept. I think that from the Dixie Fire information, that's a lot of information that came down that the town really wants that, the community really wants that. I'm a yes on that. But I would not be a yes on committing CSD funding for that. You know, so we're not going to use our Stevens County to fund the town hall. We're going to have to go after funding for that. The same thing on housing. I am super pro, you know, getting involved with the housing, as long as it doesn't take CSD funding. I think that the housing is something that also would build community confidence, and that is why I was a yes vote on purchasing those lots. I was a yes vote on that, because I felt that if CSD committed to buying property, that would, then others might go, oh, that might be a good investment to build in Greenville. And so that's my opinion on those 5 things. I guess all 5 in that order still. Actually, I think I'd switch the housing ahead of the town hall. I think I would split those in that order. Susan?
My number one priority is the fire station. I want to see a flagship fire station here. I want people to notice it, understand that you have protection here, we will respond, we have safety here in regards to the sheriff's substation and the ambulance services. I think that's very high priority for this area. We're very dependent upon, by the paperwork that Bob has turned in over last year, 2 year, how many runs they make under each level, fire, accident, rescue, whatever. So that's my number one priority. My number 2 priority is water system. We don't have a town without a water system. So well and tank is right up there, and then that raw water line for backup fire suppression. I think that's up there too. Let's see, the town center.
What about the parks?
The parks is my number 3.
Okay.
bicycle to ride around the valley and get run off the road by a logging truck. God, I miss those logging trucks. The town center and the housing, at this point, the town center, I think, is feasible in 5 to 10 years. Until we get more momentum going around here with the secured schools, with fire station. One of the things that I wish, and I don't know how it's getting done or whatever, is getting industry here. We need industry so desperately.
Industry?
Yes.
Jobs.
And a lot of that indicates the town center. And as part of the town center, I know Adam would like a swimming pool at the town center. I'd like it down by the school so we don't have kids walking through town in the middle of winter to go to a swimming pool for PE. So that's where I'm at on that. And as far as housing goes, I'm a no.
Okay, even if there's money from grants?
I don't think we should be in the housing business and competing with other people who are renting. You know, that just.
What do you mean
Who are we competing?
Well, I know this gentleman that has a couple rentals coming up. Sonia and Fritz had rentals. I don't know if you're planning on doing that again.
We don't know
You don't know yet either. And I know a few other people that have putting rentals up.
What are they renting them for?
Can I also say really quickly, the unit quantity that we projected in the housing assessment 2 years ago was around 1,200 between Chester, Eleanor Basin, and Indian Valley, was 1,200 units. Our current capacity of production won't hit that for 20 or 30 years, kind of thing. And so, units. Yeah, and that's a diversity of housing, that's market rate, that's all the way subsidized.
That's what the housing council is coming up with, that we need 1,200 houses, is that what you're saying?
It's in the housing, it's the one thing I didn't bring, but I will provide it for you. It's a housing assessment that was performed by the Almanor Foundation and a firm called Echo Northwest that did economic research, talking with employers and employees based on current employment rate.
We didn't have housing for Mike. Our
No, I know.
lives in Quincy.
It's,
Housing. Of course.
Who's looking for housing here? Yeah. Well, Mike, yeah, was an exceptional case, that's for sure.
There was no housing for him.
No.
But.
That's not the exception at all.
That's the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, no, I just have heartburn in competing with the locals that are renting, and, you know, I've talked to several people that say, CSD shouldn't be in the housing market.
Are they building 9 units?
They're building them as fast as they can build them.
I don't see it. I don't see the locals.
As a matter of fact, if they were building, if we were to build 9 units, it would be preferable that our local builders build them, not somebody from Paradise.
And that could happen.
I think from my perspective, letting 8 million plus flow out of this county without being used, that's shameful. That's absolutely shameful.
Let's put our local contractors together to put them up.
The only thing I would say is 3 units on 3 lots.
I'm gonna agree with Andy on that.
So you gonna help me buy some more lots then?
They're all for sale.
If you use $8 to $10 million
But that
to
would
do
be
it,
my
you do
number
whatever
5,
you gotta do.
Chrissy.
As long as we're not dipping in ours. I mean, that creates a lot of work for whoever builds it. It creates some homes, hopefully nice, decent homes that, you know, whoever lives there will have some pride and take care of it.
Well, I think it goes to research.
Yeah, so.
Did you see the Rancheria building on Main Street? Has anybody seen that? There's 3 units on there.
Yeah.
There's the house, the unit over here, and a unit over here. It's beautiful. Directly across 1 Main Street. Directly across where a little bit further up from where the Legion is. It'd be worthwhile to go see what that visually looks like. Because I think what we do is we paint these pictures in our brain without seeing Like, cause I go, if I think of 3 units on a lot, it's gonna be depending on like, are they one on top of the other? Are they squeezed like this? Like, it matters, right, at the end of the day. But there's a there's a 3-unit already built on Main Street. It'd be worth to go look at. It's beautiful. It's absolutely.
Is it 3?
Mary? No, it's a house, a unit.
So it's 2 units in a garage,
Yeah.
just so you know, but, yeah,
But
but
you could,
it's the same.
I'm saying it's the same concept. Instead of a garage, it's a studio, right? But it's really nice.
Oh.
In the town center, again, if we don't have jobs, we don't have people living here, we need a town center. I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
It's the chicken before the egg, everybody.
Yeah,
That
just,
story.
cart
Well, that's
before
why
the
I
horse.
wonder if that isn't a future bill.
Well,
The challenge is that
if that funding would come through, that 20 million, that'd been awesome.
consistent approval.
We need some
Well, I think-
momentum. That
So,
would be.
so that's where our vote comes in. If the 20 million comes through, then we can vote yes or no. But it's not, right, it's not, so it's not even a vote. But do we wanna shoot the idea
I
down?
know you are.
Or should we really look for additional factors?
And I think what's important about your discussion though is giving me some direction. So there's another grant opportunity coming up, one that's not as involved as the EPA grant, so that we can submit on our own. So
And here's the thing,
I'm
a
looking
lot
for
of our
direction.
grant has been done, all I gotta do is copy paste on this.
that's a big part of it, right? Is that we keep building on it. It's this iterative process. We keep building off of what we did last time, making it better, tweaking it. And so the direction that I'm looking for is, are you only enthusiastic if we have the money in hand? Are you okay if we keep looking? It might take 3, 5, 10 years to get a grant for it. That's fine. But is the board willing to keep allowing? Do you want me to let the opportunities pass? Or do you want me to pursue the opportunities? Is the real question.
Right, what it boils down to. So you're on, the town hall.
Like I said, we need people and housing for the town hall, we need jobs for the housing.
So the housing, are, you know, if there was
We
a.
can pursue it, but it's gotta be affordable.
Okay. Okay. Wanda?
Fire station. And then the tank and the well. And then the park. Town center, it's to move down a ways, but we're gonna still pursue it. It's, you know, we want it, we need it, eventually. And the housing, we need, but I wanna see it. I wanna see the little plans and good housing. You know, remember the thing that we got presented, was it, the little houses, look like monopoly
That was
things?
the massing study.
Yeah. We didn't like that at all.
And I understand, and
It's pretty together.
so I think I'm having the same trouble maybe Adam is having is do you want me to present one thing final to you? That's the final look of it. To have you vote yes or no on it, because what I've found in doing that, people vote no because they don't like elements of it.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is, how much time, energy, effort does the board want to spend in co-development of the solution together?
Right. And I think that you guys need to be really clear and do kind of what I did in that, do you want to do this without using CSD money? Using
Yeah.
grant- See, so say that,
Yeah.
so that they hear it.
No
So
money out of
just-
our pocket.
just-
Afford it out of our pocket.
So
But
just to
we're
be
not.
clear, just to be utterly clear, my time here is funded through the Almano Foundation for Housing right now. What they're looking at right now is a board that is on the fence whether they're gonna do housing or not. And what they're like, should we even invest your time to sit at this meeting to have the
Yeah.
conversation? And so, it's a joint effort in this, especially with a significant with funding at the table, at the end of the table. Like, this is a unique project.
My thinking is, if we get a grant or money from somewhere to build the housing, and we don't have to go plunge toilets or pay for insurance, you know, whatever.
Do
Because
fish work.
maintenance and all that is a big cost, and as long as
100%.
we're not responsible for it,
So,
Susan,
yeah.
something you wanted to add? Okay.
So with that, I also hear two board members that are hesitant or no, which respect, total respect at the end of the day.
I think so far just one is a no. Andy said he was still open-minded about it as long as the.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay
So,
with it.
yeah, but I hear
You're not
Andy
gonna
say
sell
no
the-
free units. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
I am saying no to that.
okay, great. So here's the
I'm not-
reality. Let's actually reality check.
Okay,
This
let's do it.
money comes in.
Right,
It needs to be prevailing wage, number one.
right,
That is higher cost.
right.
Every time we do more units on a site, that reduces the cost of the unit and your potential revenue at the end of the day.
No,
That's not
I'm
true.
not buying that.
You're not, if you, that's why you build apartment
He's a builder
complexes,
too, Bill.
apartments
No,
versus a single
I'm
family.
sure it's easy. The cost of building, sure, you could lower the cost of construction, building 3 units connected
Yep.
some way.
Great.
I believe that, but what do you have when you're done? That's what I'm saying.
Heard.
I don't think you have anything to be proud of to,
We're,
and I agree, these little units down here, they are cool.
so that's exactly what we're referencing. That is what we're looking at building at the end of the day, is something similar to that.
Why can't you
Why
build
did you
9 of
say
those
that?
on 9 different lots? Or I mean, no.
Okay, so at the end of the day, what I'm saying is the cost of the construction and your revenue, we don't want to make the revenue go upside down, where you're not making money at the end of the day and the rent's
I
allowed.
don't think we're gonna make money.
Well, you have to break even.
I'm
Okay, so-
certain this thing's gonna end up losing money. With maintenance,
So could you
taxes,
do me
all
a favor,
those
just
things.
for the sake of the meeting?
Shut up.
No, I don't want you to.
I'm willing to
shut
chat
up.
with you, but
No, I think you're super value added
Okay.
on the board, but could you take this offline
Yeah.
with him?
Yeah.
So that you could meet each
Yeah,
other
that's
over
fine.
this
I'm
topic?
coming with you, cause
Yeah.
I'm interested too.
It's something that I think that's.
Well, so that we can address it, so that we can address your concerns in our
Absolutely.
proposal.
And look at the drawings and the designs and then, you know, put your expectations into that, and not here and not down.
And then
But,
don't
you know, maybe outline to get that whole housing thing, that, okay, first and second,
Okay,
and there was
on
someone
the
else,
housing-
and Daniel.
If the CSD is gonna go with the housing, I think that the board should put together a committee that makes the selection of the style, the size, et cetera, of the housing.
What do you think of that?
I think that's a horrible idea.
Okay.
So, what do you
But
suggest?
each board member could potentially visit with Tyler
You were
and,
talking about using the
I think that first we have to understand the fundamental role of a board member. A board member's role is, in a situation like this, a board member's role, you're policy makers. Your role is to make a policy that we are going to build housing. You're not picking out the color of the front door or the shutter style. That's not a board member's role.
So who would make those decisions as to what?
Yeah, but we just talked about maybe local builders building it, right?
That's a potential. There's several different scenarios.
Well, why wouldn't you have local builders build
Maybe
it? I
a
mean,
design build.
I mean, you may not get the bang for your buck, but the buck's there.
So part of the problem,
The buck's there, it's not coming out of ours, and then when you're all said and done, you have something. So why wouldn't you build something, or do they not wanna give the money away unless you do something like?
The funding
Stack
has
them in.
requirements to the unit production at the end of the day. So this money has to produce the most amount of units that it can at the end of the day. Our local still construction companies are gonna be more expensive than a manufactured unit. So what we need to do is negotiate with the funder to see what we can and cannot do under the funds. So
that's where you're.
I would love for our local builders to build it and us to have like, it to look beautiful. I want the town to look beautiful as well.
Yeah.
But the reality is the restrictions of the funds may prohibit us from doing that. And do we say no to the $9 million because it doesn't look exactly like a Victorian house?
You look and find out what you can
thank
do.
you, in just a second. Okay. My fire station, the water,
Park, housing, then town center, because apparently the housing is time sensitive.
It has a timeline.
Funding
with the
itself,
council.
it's branches in the
But it's not just that, that's when it needs to be, you know, all buttoned up and everything. If we don't start the process right now, that's getting yanked this year, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
We need to say, yes, we want the money.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's keep working on it.
Well, I'm hearing at this table that there's like 4 to 1 on this particular topic. 4 that would like to continue looking at it, and 1 that's
See,
opposed.
if we were to turn around and sell it, and could sell it within 2 years, I'd be okay. But like
We
I
have
said,
to retain
I
them for
don't
20.
really think that the
We don't know.
CSD should be landlords.
Well, and
Why should we be flippers? If we can't be landlords, why in the world, being a flipper would be way more appropriate. Why would we do that?
Why would
Okay,
we, what
Inappropriate.
benefit do we have to the
We have to-
CSD to be a landlord? What is the benefit?
so I'm gonna move over here. Daniel, go ahead.
So first off, I want to thank the board for having this conversation, for allowing all this community input and all this time. I think it's really important. I think it's really great. And I know you all have lives, and we all do, but thank you to everybody who's been here and gone through this, right? And I'd like to encourage more of it. And as a self-proclaimed, and everyone's aware that I am like one of the largest skeptics of anything government, I'm actually quite encouraged by the idea of seeing where the possibilities of the town center and the housing could go. I think these are potentially really amazing opportunities. I think there's a lot of red flags. I think there's a lot of things that we need to be very clear and careful with. But I think it would be silly, after hearing what I've heard, it would be silly to wipe them off the table. That said, I think that a lot of the discussion of how that goes forwards and what it looks like and what it should probably involve a lot of specialized, take the damn time to talk to the pain in the ass community and like do this multiple times at multiple venues to get the feedback on it. And then the last thing I want to say is, because we can all argue our opinions, but at the end of the day, it's the community center and the community's housing, right? So we want to make sure we do right by them. And the last thing is, Chrissy, when it comes to confidence, and I'm in no way judging anything that anyone has done here, right? But when it comes to building confidence, I will say, as a community member who's admittedly not been as helpful and involved as I should have been in this whole process, it is extremely frustrating to hear even talk about anything on this list when we're 3.5 years out and we don't even have final plans on a firehouse yet.
Oh, we have.
Like that's, we do? I thought I heard somewhere that we didn't have final plans.
No, we have final plans on the firehouse.
Okay, and I mean, even then, okay, correction, but to not have broken ground on that yet, to 3.5 years out, to have taken the time that we just took to talk about all this other stuff when we don't have that started, as a community, and I'm not judging. I'm just saying, as a community member, as somebody who is rebuilding rentals, and in talking to other people who are wondering what they're gonna do, to not see ground broken on that firehouse this far out is concerning.
So I think, I'm gonna, if I may, just gonna say that when you're looking at the devastation that happened, we are lucky as a community that they have plans to build one and have shovel ready right now, 3.5 years later. Because what we keep forgetting as a community, because we all, like you, we all get frustrated. Like all of us who are working on these projects, we get so frustrated because everything takes so long, particularly if you're using government money, particularly if you're trying to get money from FEMA, get money from your PG&E claim, which you guys haven't even settled yet. Like all these contingency pieces. What people don't realize is at the end of the day, the first 8 months of our fire, after the fire hit on August 4th, the first 8 months, there was nothing. No discussions, no nothing, because people were just trying to survive. And people who were helping the people to survive, right? And it happened that there were a handful who was immediately looking at this bigger picture to start putting pieces in place. We are not 3.5 years out on a fire. when you look at rebuilding and restructuring a community. We are maybe two, maybe. And if anybody, I have tons of experience working with state and federal grants, tons. It is the most painful, long process that you could possibly be a part of. And every single time you think you have 5 steps forward, you're going 3 steps back. This is going to take, this rebuild is going to take decades. Decades, like any other rebuild. There's not a single, we traveled right after the fire. We were like, we need help. What did people do? Nobody, not a single community in the United States is where we are today in less than 3.5 years. Not a single one.
And I'd like
Jopa's close. Jopa, Missouri's is close.
I'd like to speak on the fire department a little bit. Without the Dixie Fire, we would not have the equipment that we have. There was a lot of donated engines that were given to Indian Valley. The stalls that they're in right now here in Greenville were donated by Cal OES. They took the building that we were temporarily housed in, they took that away. But we're limping by. The electrical, the gravel, the concrete, all that stuff's been ongoing. Bob Orange has done an amazing job refurbishing all of our fire districts in Taylorsville and Genesee, in North Arm, you know, this one here, to keep us limping along. I've said this in meetings before. We got a $7 million gift from the state, or grant, whatever it is. And we put that in the bank, and we used the interest off that money to keep our operating costs going. We did not want to put that into the fire hall building and then not be able to keep the CSD operational. So by doing so, we have completely rebuilt all the sewer structures, made sure that the water systems are in good shape, made sure that we had staff that can operate 30% of the new water system lines that are in Greenville. We have held off breaking ground for, you know, hoping for the PG&E settlement, which we think is just months away. Once that happens, we'll be rocking and rolling. The $1.5 million grant that we get from the county, that's gonna go to work this year. And in 2025, we are going to get the flat work done on the fire hall. Does that answer where we are with the fire hall? But yeah, the plans are done.
Possibly more, 2025, we mean the construction.
I think everybody at this table wants to do
possibly
more.
we can be done.
That's why it's our number one
in
priority.
2025.
And it is our main
for that.
focus. Until that fire hall is done, everything else is secondary.
So I would just like to piggyback off what you said. Communication is key. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Anybody can come talk to
So-
me anytime.
That's the reality. Nobody's gonna come and hunt you down and
I'm
find you.
bouncing all this crazy stuff off of my own.
That gets, you know, I mean, that's what happens. And it's the not knowing, it's the vagueness,
Right.
it's the, we're putting 3 units on one lot, and let the mind create that, right? So we're putting, just a minute. So we're putting 3 units on one lot, much like the Rancheria did. Have you seen that? Go try to buy that. You know, check it out. It looks pretty nice. That's the answer. It's not, we're putting 3 units on there. Communication is so key because we are rebuilding an entire community, not just this town, but it affects Taylorsville. It affects, you know, Crescent Hills. It affects everybody.
The valley, yep.
So you need people to feel comfortable knowing that these decisions are in the hands of people that are really paying attention to what they want.
And the
And it's
best, yeah.
different than it
Yeah.
was 3.5 years ago prior to the fire. We have fewer people living here. We have a school district that's struggling. You know, what do we want this community to look like? And so we need to be really visual when we're telling them, we're thinking about something like this. And we got your back. You've got to make them feel comfortable and confident.
So I'm gonna say this from the 3.5 years that I've been working on this. communications is always what comes up. We need to communicate more, we need to communicate more, we need to communicate more. We have meetings. The school district is a perfect example. There are meetings that are held on a regular basis for all these organizations. It is also it's on the community members to actually come and engage. We are in the trenches trying to get stuff done. So when you go, you're trying to communicate, so I go, there's a balance, right? Dan does agree, like when Dan goes to them, he at least puts it out on Facebook, here's what happened, here's what people are doing. So it takes the whole community to stay engaged.
Right.
The people in the trenches, with the exception of their meetings, and I keep saying, this community is classic. But the only times they show up to meetings is when there's a crisis or something big's gonna happen and people wanna have a say in it. Like, and they come in weeks after conversations have been had at every meeting.
I'll tell you what, I love having people come.
Me too.
I think
It saves so much time. When we talk about communication, I beg people, come to the meetings. We know also, we need to have meetings that are comparable, right? This happens to be at 3, not ideal, but you guys, it's a special meeting, so it's different.
Many committees are.
But you go, that's right, and we have this amount of people, right?
Yeah.
So I go, how do we encourage the community to go come in, follow what everybody's doing, come to the meetings, but that's where we're looking at creating a better system. Because right now, Chamber has a meeting, Rotary has a meeting, IVCSD has a meeting, IVRPD has a meeting, and the school district. You got 5 meetings in like a month. How many people out there who are trying to work, raise their families, do all these things, have a chance to go to 5 meetings?
And go to the board.
So how do we, and we are working on this, how do we create a new system where potentially the community could show up once a month? And all these entities are at the table. And everybody is informed at once.
Such a quick report out, that'd be cool.
So, but I just wanted to say that because I get frustrated when I keep hearing people, you're not communicating, and I'm thinking, I don't know what else to do besides.
On top of that,
you know.
I have some ideas, I'll pass you offline.
Okay.
Okay, back to this, where we at? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the scheduled board training and strategic planning session.
Yes, so, I have 2 potential dates. What we were looking at is a full day meeting. We do some time in the morning with our legal counsel to do some board training. I think it's probably time. And then in the afternoon, moving into strategic planning and taking a look at last year's discussion. And, I mean, really, we've done a lot of it today, so maybe it's buttoning up some things and formalizing it and having some further discussion. But just another way to provide me with your priorities.
Okay, this is a potential action item?
Yes, I'd really appreciate if April 3rd or April 9th, if either of those work for you right now.
One is on the 3rd.
Something's happening on the 3rd.
The showcase is the 3rd.
And you're missing your 5:30.
I know.
Wanda would like a 3rd, you don't know? Can we table this and get back to you?
If you could get back to me by tomorrow, that'd be great.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Everybody's got
Just-
report back down by tomorrow, the 3rd of the night.
Either of them fine with me.
Either of them works for me.
What is the 3rd? What?
I don't know what
They're
time.
both-
It's a
What time would it be all
They're
day?
both Thursdays.
All day. All day.
The 9th is a Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, can we do lunch or something? Probably, Wednesday, is it? Okay, they're both, whatever they are, they're both the same, aren't they?
Okay, we have to get
The
back.
3rd
I'm
is Thursday,
I'm fine
the 9th
with
is
the
a
3rd.
Wednesday.
Or whichever everybody wants. I'm fine.
I want the 3rd, I want to get it over with.
Make a motion.
Drink tomorrow.
Schedule a board training and strategic planning session for April 3rd.
I second it.
Motion to admission all day and.
Motion made by Wanda, seconded by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Well, like 10 to 4,
Motion carried.
probably something like that.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Such enthusiasm.
Motion to run.